He had all his talents sealed, but he made a contract with the Shadow Monarch to relive his life. And guys, new sis in the area, I have some news for you. For now I will be posting a video a week every Saturday with as many hours as possible. My plan is to post one 3-hour video every Saturday until the channel hits 100,000 subscribers, and after that I will increase the frequency of videos and also increase the frequency of hours in each one of them. So leave a like and subscribe, and I hope you like this new project because it is much easier for me to post and also deliver with quality for you. I hope you understand, so leave a like, subscribe and share this video so we can reach 100k and be able to post even faster. So without further delay, let's go to this manhwa. It's absurd. And at the beginning of everything it is said about a clan of swordsmen that dominates half of the world. The Hun Kandel, and people from this famous clan are born with powerful bodies and exceptional talents and rule the world with their power. Martial dominant battles, loot domains, a world of survival of the fittest that justifies these three actions. And it was in this clan that our proto was born, and he is Jin Hun Kandel, the youngest son of the Hun Kandel clan. And in the selection ritual that predicts the child's future, he chose the patriarch's sword, marking him with the child who received the patriarch's destiny. And then your father realizes that he chose the Barasada and says that this is interesting, and Jin says that he also believed that he would only have success and glory in his future. Among so many things were not as he imagined, and he is wondering how this makes sense. After all, he has no talent with sword and the people around are in disbelief. After all, Ron Kandel's descendant couldn't be that bad with the sword, so he was popularly called Hun Kandel's disgrace, being below the average of his entire family, and he was called the least talented of the Hun Kandel. So his brothers will talk to him asking if he is still brandishing his sword for no reason, and the other brother tells him to leave his brother alone. After all, maybe he doesn't want to pick up a sword unless it's a special sword. And that white-haired girl asks Jinha where he left his special sword, and the other asks where he put the Bari's ADA, because now he is only using a small wooden sword. And then he goes after the boy, wanting to confront her by ordering and answering him and then kick. The boy is even stronger and Jin falls to the ground suffering. Then he looks at his wooden sword and his brother asks why he keeps using it. After all, there is no reason for this. And then he steps on the boy's hand, and then the boy's notes slide, noticing that Aquila is the basic theory of fencing, and asks him if he thinks he'll go somewhere studying that, and he says that's why they shouldn't give chances to those who prove they're not capable. Soon Jin starts asking him to give it back, but while he worries with the paper, his other brother breaks his sword, saying that it gives chances to those who don't recognize their place. He ends up giving them a useless hope. While he breaks his sword, he tries to backtrack, but the other brother holds him by the hair, saying they are doing it for him and they say that he should be grateful, and ask if this education that his nanny gave him, and the boy says that Gilly has nothing to do with it. And the brothers, seeing how the boy is still fighting back, say that they need to teach him good lessons like your older brothers. So after the torture session, he says that the torment of his older brothers and his pathetic talent, he thought none of that mattered. He thought he just needed to work hard, and with enough hard work he would receive recognition from his family, and he thought that with this he would become a proud member of Jan Kandel, and sincerely he believed in this a lot. But the fateful day arrived when he was expelled from his clan, and in front of the clan with closed doors he began to think about the words he said to him. They said that because his hard work is commendable they won't kill him, and he says that at the age of 23 he was expelled from the clan and ended up becoming a wanderer without destiny, and that was when he met his master, and that was also when he discovered that in fact had talent, and it was the talent for the forbidden act within his clan, a talent for magic. And then 3 years later he is saying that by connecting the mana that exists in nature with the magician's mana, it is possible to recover mana and strengthen the next magic he conjure. Then he feels a presence flooding the room, and when he sees he is already in complete darkness, and someone appears behind him and asks who it would be, and that being says he is Sol Dire, the master of shadows. He recognizes Jin Ron Kandel, and he says that as the god of shadows he will offer him a contract, and he says that if he makes a contract with him he will not only be able to use spiritual power but it will also nullify his curse. And then he notices the curse that was on the boy and says that it looks like he received someone's wrath when he was younger, and he says that the boy couldn't show his talent because of such an insignificant curse. He asks what that curse would be, and Seven says that's exactly what the curse, called the illusion of the blade, represses his talent with the sword, and it must have been a very painful curse for a Rum Kandel like him. So he simply touches the curse and undoes it, and says that must have been why he was attracted to Jin, and says that from this moment on no curse will afflict the boy, freeing him once and for all, and says that what remains for the boy is to become the magical swordsman of the century. And he tells Jin that he will watch him with pleasure, and the boy returns to reality and immediately catches a sword coming out of the room, and then he starts swinging it at everything that is side, and he realizes that it was like this as Sol Dire said, because when he picked up the sword he could see its level, and he notices that the sword is not heavy at all, and it looks like he is just swinging his arm, and he says that if he added magic in this he could go to another level. And then he finally manages to reach at the top of his swordsmanship, and says that the weakest boy in Rum Kandel no longer exists, and thinks to himself that finally his hard work is bearing fruit. fruit, but in the meantime soldiers start to look out for him, and a while later G is already bleeding for all his holes. He says that he just heard something and realizes that it was Greto, and also notices that his body is very heavy for some reason, and he says this while he is already buried under various rubble, and starts calling for Soul Deard, asking if anyone is there, and he notices that he is going end up dying in his sleep and realizes that he was destined for nothing after all. He didn't have the chance to use his magic or the power of Soul Deard, and he asks why was he given this second chance then, and after closing his eyes he wakes up in another place with small hands in the middle of a forest and realizes that those are people from his clan, and looking ahead he sees several swords and asks what he is holding. After all, he is sure he had died, and soon Gil appears in front of him wishing good luck to his young master, and the boy wonders what he is doing there and soon sees a sword that he recognizes very well as a sword, and soon he realizes that he has returned to the selection ritual, and he begins to crawl, realizing that he has returned to the past, to when he was just a 1-year-old baby. Then he goes to the sword and says that in the past life he picked up this sword by coincidence, and when he touches the sword everyone is excited that the boy chose the patriarch sword, and he says that in this life you will choose it for yourself, and after the patriarch recognizes that the youngest chose the Barisada, he ends the selection ritual and orders them to take him to the castle of the storm. And 6 years later in the castle people are trying to reach a book on the shelf and say that they can't reach it, and say that it's been years since he came to the storm castle, and according to the rules of the house he needs to stay there until he turns 10, so he has 3 more years to enjoy, but he says he's bored, and then he hears a strange noise and asks what happened to maid, so she says that in the room the young master has a dead bird, and there he sees the animal with puncture marks made on purpose, and then he says that the only one who would do something like that inside the Tempest Castle would be the 2 who appear soon after, and they come with an evil smile, getting sad that the maid found the gift first and says it was a waste, and the one with black hair is called Daytona Run Candel, aged 9, 11th of the 3 brothers, so the other one with white hair is called Raitun Ram Candel, 12th of the 3 brothers, also aged 9. This is when they start talking to Jean, asking him what he thinks of his brother's present and asking if he is so moved to the point of crying, and soon Jean starts to remember his brothers from his past life, and he says that these 2 gained fame as assassins after becoming flag bearers, and he says that boys who aren't even 9 years old killed an innocent bird just to mess with him, so he gets really pissed off, and the guy tells him not to cry, after all it's going to stay ugly, and Jean continues on silence, and they ask if the boy can hear him, and then he puts the blame on the boy, saying that he is being arrogant, saying that he doesn't even need to pay attention to them because he chose the patriarch's destiny, and he wonders why a person like that would go unarmed without luck, and Jean starts to speak very quietly, and Raytona comes close to him asking what he said, but he puts his hand on the boy's shoulder and wants to start attacking, but Jean holds the boy's hand, scaring him, and soon a black aura appears in the place, and Jean say that they are being too noisy, telling them to shut up. Then Jean starts attacking one of them, and Raytona soon gets nervous, but Jay doesn't stop there and continues hitting him without stopping, and says that he has held back so far but he won't hold back more, and he says that from now on it would be good for them not to appear in front of him anymore, and then one of the guards appears and asks what was happening there, and Jean quickly disappears with that black hour that was in his hand, and then the officer asks Jean what happened there. However, the boy says that they suddenly started fighting, and he asks if he would have listened correctly, but Jean asks if he didn't hear him brutal and decides to simply accept it, leaving, saying that he's going to take rounds to the doctor. However, the boy doesn't let him leave and says that his brothers have somewhere else to go and tells him to follow him, in that way the 2 go out in the rain, and Jean prepares a pit for that bird dead, leaving the 2 boys there, and then Ken asks if he is thinking about leaving his brothers there. After all, the storm is going to get stronger and stronger, but Jean says that his brothers need to understand the gravity of what they did, so Ken simply decides to respect the boy's opinion and follows him back home, thinking that that energy was definitely not an aura, so he wonders if maybe that was the sis, and says that if that is the case this may be not a simple fight between brothers, and Ken says that he will probably need to report this to the patriarch, and in the meantime Jean looks at everything from the window and says that as he thought, Ken will report everything to his father, who he says that Ken is their guardian knight but also their watchman, and he says that it must seem like magic in C's eyes, so there's no way he can keep quiet, and soon he reveals that it is spiritual power and proof of his contract with Soul Deard, and says that thanks to this power he discovered that the contract is also valid in this life, and the boy says that in addition, immunity to curse bestowed by Soldiered on contractor ended up allowing him to escape the curse of the Blade's illusion in this life. He says that now Randall's fool no longer exists from from now on his life will be very different from the previous one, and he says that the only thing he lacks is meet with his father. Then OC reports everything to the leader, and he immediately tells Kan to gather all the knights as he is going to meet the youngest and the older brothers. Realize this and say that he managed to gather the 7 Randall knights and the 200 knights upon them, and then they leave for the storm castle with the leader in the lead. So Mary asks what is with the sudden order of meeting and asks brother Dipos if he knows anything. She asked sister Luna and she didn't seem know nothing either, so she says she was busy knocking out the wizard before that, and Dipos says the Tana twins are going to arrive at Storm Castle next year, so he says he doesn't think that's why, and maybe he's planning to go see his little brother, and Mary asks why they were going to see him, and Dipos reminds her that he chose the patriarch sword in the selection ritual, but she wonders even though he chose the patriarch sword this is really necessary, but Dipos says he never knows what his father is thinking while he gossips. Luna asks them both to be silent, and Mary thinks to herself that for her father to go see him in person, her little brother must be very useful. Meanwhile Gilly is talking to Jean saying that he can't believe that the Lord Patriarch is going in person visit him, and maybe he's even coming to see the young masters, and the boy says he doesn't know, but he thinks to himself that Can probably reported it to his father directly. He says that C is an inflexible person and there's no way he could have concluded that he would use magic directly, and that's why he would have reported exactly what he observed, and he thinks that the youngest son who uses an unknown power other than aura or mana, so his father must be coming to see in person what that power is, and he thinks that it is probably not just that he wants to check this power and determine whether or not he will be able to help the future and prosperity of the clan. Then the doors open, the knights enter, and everyone bows before the Lord Patriarch. He immediately asks them to call the brothers to the surface, and then the two kneel before their father, and he says that he heard that they had a fight with Jean and asks what his mistakes were in that, and the boys look at each other and say that they didn't do anything wrong because it was Jean who attacked them first, and also says that he used a known skill and says that it wasn't aura but magic or something, and then they say that magic is the taboo of their clan and having to turn their father against Jean. In the meantime Mary is disappointed in both of them. They continue saying that they should interrogate him before he hides anything, but his father tells them to stop and says that his children must engrave something inside their hearts and says that they will not survive in Run Candel, so he orders them to bring Jim to his presence. While the boy goes he thinks that your father Soren Hun Candel is the strongest and coldest man he has ever met, and he is the strongest being of this era who reached the level of a demigod, the Genesis Knight, and it is said that he was once a normal man, but after reaching the level of a demigod he lost all the emotions that made him human, and it is said that he became a being who only had a blind obsession focused on the clan and its prosperity, and for a father like that, someone who had no talent for swordsmanship as he was so good as nothing. But he thinks that everything is different now, because in this life he will not be able to ignore him as he enters the hall and bows before the patriarch, and then his father asks why he is calling him patriarch and not father, and he responds that brothers, sisters, and the guardian knights are more than 100 people from the clan have already visited him, so he thought it was an official visit from the patriarch and decided to address him that way. So his father realizes that this was a good answer and says that he came to the castle for other reasons, so he sends the boy call him father and speak, who will ask the same thing which he asked his brothers, and asks what is the mistake that his brothers made in the fight, and the boy says that it is simply revenge. After all, if someone is a member of Rum Candel he must return what he received, whether it be kindness or hate, and the patriarch asks for everyone except them to get out of there, and everyone is amazed. After all, the youngest passed the patriarch's test, so the matriarch asks what they are doing. After all, the patriarch gave an order and soon they get out of there, and Mary is impressed with he managed to come face to face with his father, and he immediately realizes that his little brother might not be that bad after all. So his father says that he sent everyone away to ask him something in private, and says that his brothers said that he uses a power special, and he says that in Candel Rum the use of magic is strictly prohibited, and he says that this is to blame because when you learn magic you will never reach the limit of swordsmanship, and the patriarch asks what kind of power he has and says that if it happens to be magic the boy will get away with it, and Jean prepares to say, thinking that now that his father knows about his power he will never let the boy slip up, and he tells his father that he also doesn't know what this power is. He says that it is a power that is not an aura, not even magic, so he wonders what he should call it, showing it to his father saying that if he doesn't mind he could give it a name, and soon his father realizes that that power is the power of the first patriarch, and his father soon recognizes that power as spirit of the Barazada and is incredulous that this child he really would have been destined to be the patriarch, and then he asks what happened to his father, and his father explains that that is the power of Sol Dire, the god of shadows, and the boy pretends not to know what that is, and his father says that Sol Dire he made a contract with the first patriarch of Run Candel, Ser Timar, and he says that this is the god who has been with his clan since his birth, but after Timar passed away Sol Dire never appeared to the Randall again, and he says he doesn't know which one it is either the reason, but it seems he returned to the Randalls through Jean, and the boy soon decides to ask his father a question asking if that person, the god Sol Dire, is stronger than him, but his father keeps asking asking himself because he has never dueled against a god, so there is no way of knowing, and the boy keeps thinking about this sentence. After all, his father doesn't know because he has never dueled against a god, and he thinks that this is definitely an answer worthy of the most powerful man, and so his father calls Jean, caressing the boy and saying that that was a good question, and he says that this innocent question from the boy has become a big subject for him, and he says that coming to visit his son that day was the right thing to do, and he says that now he's going to ask him something, and he asks how the boy wants to use this power, and the boy says he wants to use it for the good of his own clan, but his father starts to laugh, saying that it is a very interesting lie. After all, the boy defeated his older brothers and left him outside in the storm, and now he says he wants to use the power for the good of his own clan, and so he tells his son to answer him with honesty, and the boy thinks that he won't be fooled so easily, and then he responds that this power he wants to use for his own good, so his father says that now he liked the answer and says that he will keep an eye on the boy from now on. Then, when his father leaves, all the pressure that was on the boy ends up falling, and he is happy that it is over because it would have been good enough to be able to use his spirit freely. But above all, his father is eager to see his growth. Now he says he didn't expect it to be like this. After your past life, he didn't even exchange glances with his father, and he says that now he's going to live a completely different life than before. And soon after, Mary goes to her little brother to give him a present, and he asks what that is, and she says that it's a special gift that her sister will give it to him, so he gives it to the nanny and tells him to cook and eat it to get stronger. So he wonders why his sister gave him a gift. Then when he opens that box, he notices that it is a heart of a phoenix, and he notices that she is giving it to a mere 7-year-old boy, and concludes that his sister Mary is definitely a bit crazy. And then he thinks about Mary Runcandel, the 7th flag bearer of the Runcandel, and a 6-year-old knight stars. Her nickname is Stormy Mary, and it is said that she has another secret name which would be the crazy woman of the region. So, and he says that it is obvious why an insane woman with a thirst for battle would give this precious thing to her little brother, and he translates this as her ordering him grow and become strong to fight her, and he thinks that if he eats this at this age, he is expected to develop a tolerance to fire, and in addition this also increases his growth rate. And he remembers that the phoenix heart was necessary for 6-star magician could safely summon a phoenix. Then he says that maybe in this life he will be able to summon a real phoenix with his own hands. And Gilly arrives with his meal, saying that Mary left him a very good gift before leaving, and tells him to eat it while it's still hot, and the boy says that before that he asks if his brothers have anything to talk to him about, and they start to get Miguel, saying that it seems to be a little big for him to eat alone, so they say they noticed that Jim was cooking a huge pot just now, and the boy asks if they want a piece of that, and then they both start shaking their heads like they were two hungry puppies. So Jean makes a request for them, and soon after the two are with parents doing a hole in the ground, asking why they have to do this. After all, there is nothing there, and he asks what his brother wants, and they also ask what will happen if they find out that they were the ones who dug it, and one of them says that it doesn't matter. After all, if anyone is going to get in trouble, it would definitely be Jin, and they say that it will be worth it. After all, just the broth is enough, and they also agree that your little brother is a little scary, and with the noise of him digging, a stone rolls towards inside a room in a installation, and in a tube looking like a preserve someone is trapped there, and that person seems to have the same powers as Jin. So it's almost nightfall. The maid gets scared when she sees the twins arriving totally dirty, and Proda simply welcomes him, saying that they came back faster than he expected, and the boys just tell him to shut up. After all, they did what he wanted, and now they want some soup, and he says he left it there, and when the kids look, it's just 2 spoons, and they're like disappointed, asking if this is a teaspoon, saying it's very small, but Jean says he just said he was going to share but never specified how much, so he gave a little just like he promised, and tells his brothers to enjoy it, and they are very pissed off and can only thank him and go down. And Jay in turn, he leaves in the middle of the rain and goes to where the brothers were, saying that he thought they would do it anyway, but they did it the way he asked, and he says that for this thickness, a 1-star spell should be enough, and he says that he was already frustrated because he kept accumulating mana and had nowhere to use it, and then he casts the spell, breaking that wall, revealing a secret door, saying that this is the secret library of the Hun Candel, and he thinks that this is a place he couldn't go to the past life, but he feels strange being there, and he remembers his brother saying that an activation phrase was needed to enter, and he recites the phrase, saying that one of Run Candel's children came with Solar Murican, and the door opens. He says that the Run Candel library has a collection of secret tomes from the clans that the Run Candel have defeated over the last 1,000 years, and he notices that the place is huge. He says that this is a place only allowed to carry Randall flags, and he remembers his brother saying that it's useless for him to know about this place since he didn't have the right to become a flag bearer, but this ended up being useful, and he says he's going to make the most of this place. But as he walks, he ends up running into that man who was inside the barrel, and asks what that is. He notices that that man has scales and asks if he is human, and when he touches the glass, he wonders what that man was doing there, but then he remembers the Murican's phrase and asks if that would be the dragon Black Murican. He says he has already heard about the Black Dragon losing to the first monarch and falling into a deep sleep, but he is incredulous that this legend is real, but he thinks that now is not the time for that, and wonders enters where the secret tomes are, and while he turns to look for the dragon and starts to move towards it, he finally finds the ones he was looking for, saying that there is the secret of all the clans. He starts with the secret tome of the famous Master Swordsman clan, the Kungan clan, and starts reading and speaking. That the content is a little difficult to understand with only the 3-star theory, and he says that he wanted to take this with him but he would end up getting caught, so he decides to just copy the passages every time he goes there, and that's when he starts going non-stop. And one day he feels a presence behind him asking who to be, and he says that no one would come to the Storm Castle library at this time. So the man appears on the other side of the door asking who he is, and then he recognizes him as Murikin and asks what Murikin is doing there because he doesn't remember nothing in his past life about him having awakened, and he thinks he will calm down. After all, Murikin is the guardian of his clan, so if he is polite and acts with a child he can go easy on him, and the boy tries to make a mistake by saluting the guardian from his clan, but Murikin starts to get pissed off asking who the guardian is and he is with. He confirms with the boy if he just called him guardian, and he asks why they who don't know anything treat him as if he were a guardian, so he starts calling the Run Candel cursed because how dare they teach this to their children, and he even thinks that it's not like he can get mad at that little kid, but he says that while he's already mad, and he falls to the ground desolate saying he woke up because it smelled good and it hasn't happened for a long time, but he ends up noticing that it's just the brat, but even so he continues to smell this smell on the brat, the smell of spiritual energy, and he says that even though he has slept for 1000 years he still remembers this smell, this dense smell of energy spiritual, and he says that this is something that only someone who accepted a contract could have, and Jim notes that the reason Murikin awakened was because of his spiritual energy, and he starts to ask where did this come from. Jean is excited to test something showing energy to Murikin asking if he is talking here. He says that his father said that this is the power of the god of shadows Lord Soldaret. In this Murikin is starting to get pissed asking if Soldaret is joking. After all, the promised contractor of 1000 years is a softie in that he gives himself up as Vencido, saying that he had a promise with Soddard he would have to help the person according to his promise, and that person unfortunately for Murikin is Jean himself. So he is wondering how he would have a promise with Soldaret, and Murikin says he will tell him the details later because he just woke up and is still a little dizzy. He thinks it will be a little difficult for a child to understand and says he should formally introduce himself to the contractor, and he says it is Murikin, the representative of Soldaret, his friend and the last descendant of the first shadow beings, and according to the promise of 1000 years from today he will be with Jin. In this the boy is amazed that dragon is with him, and Murikin asks the name of the boy, and then he says being Jim Hun Candel, the 13th and youngest son of the Hun Candel, and so he simply touches hands with a gigantic dragon. In the moral, this is absolutely too much cinema, and then a little more is said about the black dragon Murikin, and the Mount Murikin where the Storm Castle stands was originally named after the dragon, and the black dragon Murikin was a powerful ruler who reigned over the area for many years. However, 1000 years ago Murikin lost the battle against the first patriarch Run Candel, fear Hun Candel, and it is said that after giving up the mountain Murikin and the castle of the storm Murikin he fell into a deep sleep. However, these two were not enemies. The dragon was guardian and friend of the first patriarch, and the contractor of a god is usually accompanied by a dragon guardian. Despite this, nothing was known about the soldered dragon being always the mystery, but it makes sense if it is because Murikin was in a deep sleep. So Jean thinks that now that Murikin is awake he has gained a guardian dragon, so he returns to Murikin bringing some snacks and thinking that from now on he must ask any questions he has about him in advance. So he says that it has been months since Murikin woke up and that he started visiting the secret library, and then he asks why the dragon fought with Temur, but the dragon says that this happened 1000 years ago and asks him how he wants him to remember it, and Jean thinks to himself that there was something he discovered about Murikin that the dragon is unfortunately crazy about strawberry pie, and the dragon asks what is he coming to do there, and the boy says he is transcribing it, saying he is taking notes and taking everything with him. After all, if he takes the secret Tomas his comings could be discovered in this Maracan. He asks if he can understand all that, and the boy says he can understand around 30%, but the dragon asks him not to be upset because he is doing very well for his age, and he says that the others are wandering around since they can't even do what he is doing, but the boy says that it is normally like that. After all, he is a Run Candel, this is the least that is expected of him, and he says he has 12 sisters, older brothers, and still has his father, his mother, the older ones. He needs to do even more if he wants to surpass them all. In this he asks Murikin if he were the first patriarch how much of this book would he have understood, and he thinks to compare himself with the best in history to see what level he would be at. However, Murikin says that if Timar was his age he wouldn't be able to understand a single sentence from that book, but he says that the theory is different from a real battle because he fought well without reading these books, and the Murikin says that he also has talent as a Timar but not as much as him, and that the boy becomes discouraged thinking that he will never be able to become like the first Lord Patriarch, but the dragon is in doubt. After all, he is the contractor of Soddard as well as Timar, and he also has a good brain to read a book like that, and he tells the boy to train without stopping and not to be impatient. Because if he does that he will get so strong as fear, so maybe he can even overcome it. That boy asks he really thinks so, and the dragon confirms positively, asking if the boy knows what Soldierd's nickname is. He says he doesn't know, so MONARCH reveals the nickname of his god, who is infinite, and he says that as Soldieret's power has no limit, it also means that his contractor's power has no limit. So the dragon tells him to stop for free and cheer up. After all, he will teach him a new skill that will make the boy feel much better, and while play behind his back he starts to teach that technique, and the boy asks what that is, and MONARCH responds that that is spiritual liberation, and the dragon says that this is an ability that every being that uses spiritual power must master. It is the beginning and the end of the use of spirit. However, it is extremely dangerous if used without proper training, so the boy has to go slowly and learn carefully. In this he says that he already understands and asks MONARCH what he needs to do first, so the boy says that first he has that learn to release of mana. This makes the boy doubtful. He says for himself he must learn this, thinking that he has already done this hundreds of times in his past life, and MONARCH says that spiritual liberation is release and transfer of mana, and the boy needs to be good at these two skills, so he will have to at least train for 2 to 3 years, and the boy stays quiet thinking that 2 to 3 years is a long time. And the dragon starts saying that he can't teach the advanced skill if he doesn't even know the basics, but the boy just releases energy, asking if he can learn it now, and the dragon wonders how he did it, but the boy says he could do it before. And then the MONARCH asks if he can also do mana transfer, and the boy quickly demonstrates that he can, and the dragon says that only the brightest geniuses can do this, and says that he must really be very talented, so he will show him what spiritual liberation is like, and the boy gets excited about this. And the dragon says that spiritual strength comes from the shadows, so every shadow in this world is born by the will of Soldiered, who he claims that Soldiered is the master of all the shadows in the world, and he as sole contractor of Soldiered can also become the master of all the shadows in the world, and this while flooding the room with several trails of shadows. And so he asks what the boy shows about this spiritual liberation, and the boy gets very excited about it. And in another place they talk to Miss Luna and say that this area has been released, and they say that the mission will end when clean 5 more areas, but she says that 4 months should be enough and tells the writers to rest, and then changes the subject by asking what a 9-year-old child generally likes. My friend pays attention to this absurd fishmonger of hers. So 6 months after finding MONARCH, the Tana twins turned 10 years old and left the Storm Castle, and they end up saying goodbye to their brother. And as for Jean, he has his 9th birthday and everyone is happy about it, and Geely makes a strawberry cake for the boy he wants to share with everyone, and after that he comes talk to him apologizing for the sudden interruption. He asks what was it, then Cam says that Luna came to visit him, and he is soon surprised by this. After all, the first flag bearer of the Hun Kandel clan and a 9-star knight, the oldest among the 3 brothers, the white whale Luna Hun Kandel, who is said that although she was stronger among the brothers June Kandel, she abandoned her desire to become a future matriarch and freed herself from the disgusting war of succession of June Kandel, and she really is a whale white that moves alone, and it is said that because of this she never showed interest in any of his siblings, to the point that she was more of a stranger than family to him, and he claims that he had this gigantic distance between him and his past life. Turns around Storm Dawn's castle, nothing. He wonders if something has happened to his clan, or maybe she has discovered that he is entering his clan's secret library, so he greets his older sister and she tells him that he has grown up a lot, and the boy Manda an excuse and goes on to say that if she had warned him he could have dressed better for her visit, and she says you're cute, but asks if she needs to tell you when she's going to see your little brother about this. The boy is surprised by her statement, and she asks if for some reason he is uncomfortable, and also asks if the boy is sick, but he says that it is not that, after all he is just a little nervous, and he says that this is the first time he has seen her so close up, so he is a little nervous about this, and she is surprised by the boy's speech and is told, which is a run family custom, candle destroy her brothers and steal from one of the others. Then she realizes that maybe Jean thought she came there to watch him, so she starts to get frustrated, saying that it seems like she was insensitive, and says that he may even be young, but she forgot that he still is a member of Run Candle. And then she apologizes to the boy and tells her older brother that I would like to talk to him alone, and asks the boy if he can ask Baba and the Guardian Knights to leave, and Jim is surprised with that and ends up accepting it, because even though she doesn't know the reason, it doesn't seem to be a bad thing. So she talks to her brother, saying that the reason she came to visit out of nowhere is that she has something to tell him, so he asks what it would be, and she says that when her father came to visit her, his actions caused all the brothers to start paying attention to Jean, and she says that this means that as soon as he leaves the Storm Castle all the brothers will be on guard against him, watching him, but she signed for Jean that doesn't want him to get caught in a fight between the family and lose his happiness, so she states that she wishes he wouldn't be hurt by Hun Candel's disgusting customs, and then he is surprised by this, thinking that this must have been the reason she gave up on and become a matriarch. Then he starts to think, after all, she didn't want him to get hurt, so why didn't she warn him anything in her past life about her brothers? So he wonders if it's because he wasn't worth it before, or because his other brothers don't give him. They saw him as an opponent, so he thanks his sister for her words but says that he intends to continue in this fight. So she tries to say that she is serious, not because she thinks he could be a threat to her in the future, but the boy says he knows that, but he already experienced an assassination attempt in this. Luna is incredulous with what she heard, and he says that is exactly why, even more so in this fight, but she starts to get nervous, asking if someone tried to kill her in the storm castle, and in that the aura blood begins to take over and she becomes possessed with rage. So she asks Jean who tried to murder her, but he says that he can't say that, after all he doesn't know who it was yet, but he tries to calm his sister down, saying that they tried but he's still okay, and he says that he's actually happy that she helped him realize that not all of his brothers hate him there. Then she hugs the boy, calling him her dear little brother, and says that in that case he's already fallen into the middle of the boy's disgusting fight, her clan, so she is very sad about because of this, and he finds it strange that his sister Luna is such a sentimental person, telling her not to be sad, and she says that he is right, after all she shouldn't talk about these things and a day as happy as today. So he is in doubt, and she says that it's his birthday, and in fact she came to bring him a gift and gives him a chain with a blue jewel pendant, and he is unsure what that could be, and she asks him to turn around a little, and she says that just one time when he is in a situation that he cannot handle, he can crush the blue gem of her pendant, so no matter where she is she will find him right away, and she tells him not to forget that and always keep it with him, and then congratulates him again on his 9th birthday, and soon after she will enjoy the party eating cake with his brother, and Gil is happy about it, but anyway she needs to leave, and after she leaves he goes straight to Murikan and he asks what that thing is on the boy's neck, and he says he got it as a gift birthday, and the dragon says he doesn't know who gave you this, but the person must really like him to give something like that to a boy. He asks what that would be, and the dragon says that it is an item from the demonic beast King Orgel, and it is said that 1,000 years ago countless people died trying to get this item, and Jim asks if it's such an incredible object. Dragon says it's clear because it gives him immunity against any magical attack below 5 stars, it strengthens the wielder's magical abilities, and he even thinks it has a summoning function, in which Jim notes that the dragon knows a lot about things. He says he was active around that same period, so the dragon assumes that the owner of the powerful energy who came to visit him gave him this, and Jean says yes, that is his older sister, so he asks how the dragon managed to feel that energy, and Murikan says that she must have also felt his energy, leaving the boy completely nervous, asking if the dragon doesn't think she's going to tell her clan about him being there, but Murikan says that he's worrying for nothing because she is the sister, gave her such a valuable gift as if it were nothing, so he asks Jim if he really thinks she would tell on his little brother, and ends by saying that he can definitely trust her, and outside she notices that as she thought she can feel a strong energy that wasn't there before, and she thinks that if Jean is preparing something she should pretend that she doesn't know anything for now, but tell him to remember that after all no matter what he becomes or does she will always support him. And Jean, he says that he thought the time he would spend in Storm's castle would be a pain, but he ended up gaining a lot from it: recognition, expectations from his father, the phoenix heart he received from Mary, and a connection with Luna, and even a meeting with Murikan the Black Dragon, and they are all things that he could not even dream of in his past life. And so Jean turned 10. Then it is said that he left the Storm Castle and continued his preparations to return home. In the meantime he faces Ken in a duel and ends up leaving very well against him, and Ken says that as expected he is someone the patriarch would be interested in, and he says that when he trains with someone he is the one who evaluates people, but with those eyes he is being evaluated by Jean. And when they stop training, Ken tries to talk to the boy and he asks if there is something wrong with his training, but Ken says it was an honor to be able to teach him all this time. He says he doesn't have much more time left until he leaves Storm Castle. He says he promises to give him the best training possible until the end. Then Jean says he's counting on him. This boy is in front of an old woman and puts his finger in the flame, saying he finally got his immunity against fire, so Geely asks if that isn't hot for him, but he says no, and now it feels like warm water, and she is happy. After all, Mary's gift is there helping, and she also says that she heard about the effect of phoenix hearts, but this is the first time she has seen them in person. The boy says that it is also his first time and thinks I can. Perhaps you have already absorbed at least half from the heart, and thinks that perhaps he will have been able to absorb everything in a few years' time. Gil tells Jean that they are leaving the castle early tomorrow, so he asks him to let her know if he needs anything in advance, and he soon agrees, and she looks at those books who are in the boy's bed and asks if she should keep those books in separate places, and he says yes, and soon after she says that she is going to prepare strawberry pie for dessert today, and he remembers something saying that he's going to leave for a moment and says he'll be right back, and he goes to the Murikan to remind him that they're leaving the castle tomorrow morning, and the dragon says he obviously remembers, after all he's been waiting for this for years. So Jim asks what dragon, as he plans to follow. Murikan tells the boy not to worry, after all he is the legendary Black Dragon, and no matter how weakened he is this will be a piece of cake, saying he will make sure to follow him carefully so as not to get caught. But Jim asks why. He only said now that he is weakened, but the dragon tells Miguel that he has been sleeping for 1,000 years and asks how he would be as good as new, and then Jim asks if he can regain his strength, and the dragon says yes, because he will be more strong when the boy gets stronger. After all, he is his guardian dragon, so he tells the boy to become the strongest magical swordsman and soon surpass Timar. Then Jim says he said Randall were originally a family of swordsmen. Magicians. He remembers hearing this from Sodder in his past life. The Kandel family was originally a family of magical swordsmen, and the first patriarch was the strongest magic swordsman of all time, but almost no one knows that. So the dragon says that the reason why Kandel banned magic and made this rule of only focusing on the sword, it was because of the humiliating treaty from 1,000 years ago, and he claims that people still praise him for being the guardian of the family, but he is sure that they would be comfortable if he showed up there, and he says that 1,000 years ago everyone would be amazed by his presence and would be amazed that he was accompanied by the most respected person in the world. So Jim asks if they would do that, and the dragon asks him if he thinks the story is forced, but anyway he says he will be sure to hide and tells the boy not to worry. But Jim asks what he is going to do about that barrel. After all, he will be discovered if someone goes there and is empty, and the dragon says he will use draconic magic to make a clone of himself. Then he asks what will happen if the clone is discovered, but the dragon says he is the shadow dragon and can do this easily, and the Murican says that as he said he's not at his full potential, so keeping the clone around for a long time will be difficult, but he'll do his best until Jean grows up and gets strong. And the boy simply thanks him for caring and says he brought him a special gift, one pie made with this year's first strawberry harvest and wine that he secretly got from Guile, and he tells the dragon not to get drunk, and the dragon starts to complain even though he is all polite, and then says that it was good that he was the one who created him and asks if he can introduce her to his nanny, and Jean says he will think about it. And the next day they tell Jean that when he comes home he can't wait for all the time off he had at Storm Castle. She says that of course he'd been busy training, but his routine will be much more difficult, and so will Shesh'll be much busier, and he says he won't be able to bake pies all the time whenever he wants anymore, so he tells her not to worry because he's going to work when he gets back home, and she says she's also going to make an effort for him, and so on. Night arrives calling Jean, introducing himself as Jerome, and halts at his service, and they say they will listen to the boy until he reaches the Garden of Swords. So Jean says he counts on them that they will follow the boy, and on October 30th 1790 he finally left the Storm Castle, heading to June Candel's main house, the Garden of Swords. And while they were on the way they noticed that it was snowing a lot, so they realized that they wouldn't be able to use the teleportation portal if the snow continued like this. Then they will have to stop at a village nearby, but while they are in this calm something hits their carriage, so they say it is an ambush and order them to get out of the carriage, and Geely starts to calm down his young master, telling him not to get upset. Worry because Jerome and Haltz are 7-star guardian knights and he still has her by his side, and she says that he has 20 warriors and mages and also has a chance of having archers, and she says that she doesn't think there is anyone above 7 stars since Jerome and Haltz are fighting, but Jean notices something calling her, saying that they need to get out of this chariot right now because a Kandel guardian would never leave a Kandel son behind, and he says that one of the two has to stay by his side at all times whole, and he says it means they are either fake or they are traitors, and he says that there must be some kind of device hidden inside this carriage and that's why they need to escape. So Geely, even though she is angry, understands her young master, says that starting now as Jim Kandel's servant, she must protect him with her life. In this she already pulls Wolverine's claw and tells him to understand even if she has to be a little rough, and then grabs the boy coming out of the carriage, and on the way she tells him that he must receive punishment for this incident as soon as they arrive at the main house, and he tells her that now is not the time to worry about that as they must first go to where those two are as he needs to check something, and he says that those who were attacking could be his allies after all, if the people who set up the ambush were aiming at him. The moment they got out of the carriage was the best time to kill him, and he says that he is still very quiet. That is certainly strange, and in this he understands his young master, and a red-haired man commands let them find Jean Kandel and orders Group 3 to block on the left, and he says that as he thought a leaf emblem and a black beast emblem is the Yuta clan, a magical clan of Mytel and the Black King's mercenaries, and so they recognize her as Jilly MC Rollin, and it was confirmed that Jean Kandel is still alive, and so they organize themselves to prioritize the protection of Jean Kandel, and Red says that he is the vice-captain of the Black King's 3rd mercenary squad and says that they came to rescue Jean Kandel as well as the request from his family, and they soon become against the traitors. Jim thinks it wasn't treason, in fact they were fake. He says that if they really were 7-star knights they would never have suffered so much. So after surrounding the men he asks who they are and tells him to reveal their affiliation and their objective, and one of them says that this is a very predictable question, and he asks her if she thinks they would reveal the truth to a Kandel dog, and she asks Jim what they should do, and the boy tells them to kill one and rip the one out the other's arm and then bring it to him, and just as ordered Gilly starts towards them, and with perfect what her master ordered, and seeing that the second one was resisting, she rips off both arms and simply steps on his chest and drags him to her master, and the boy says that it looks like his master underestimated the opponent too much, because to become a nanny of Run Kandel one needs to be a martial artist above the 7th star, and to assassinate Hun Kandel's son they should have sent at least 3 or 4 8-star knights. But the man tells the boy not to make him laugh because this was just a warning, because the era of June Kandel will end, and so Jean says that he also wants that to happen. Instead of the era of June Kandel he wants the it was June Kandel arrives, and so the man gets even more pissed off, giving glory to the great Zipfel, and hearing this Jean explains that the clan of wizards that dominates the other half of the world is the Zipfel clan, and as the opposite of June Kandel, they always aim for the peak of fencing. They are one clan who aim for the peak of magic, and 1000 years ago when the first patriarch of Run Kandel died, Zipfel forced a humiliating pact with Run Kandel that prohibited him from using magic, and due to the pact Joao Kandel had his magic sealed, and for his clan Zipfel was literally a 1000-year-old enemy, so he says he was thinking who would do something as common as trying to kill him. But as he is a follower of Zipfel this makes sense, so Jean tells Guile to just throw him anywhere as it's not worth it. Interrogate him because he thinks it's clear that the Run Kandel are also Zipfel's eternal enemies, so they regularly commit terrorism against the Hun Kandel, and the boy says that today's event was different from normal and must have been independent actions of an extremist group, but there is still something strange, and no matter how elaborate the disguise it must be difficult to deceive the 7-star martial artist, so he wonders if it would be interference from that guy, and after following the boy's orders Gilly reports to him. And Jean in turn talks to Mercaith, vice captain of the Black King's mercenaries, and he says that it was thanks to his distraction that they managed to escape, and as soon as they return home he will talk about his deeds and the clan will pay him generously, and then he says that he is under the takes care of him until they arrive at the gate, and the man says he will do his best. Still a little shy, he thinks what kind of boy is that? After all, even though he is Run Kandel's son, it is the first time he has left the castle and he is just a kid with 10 years old, that he says that the boy still seems comfortable and dignified, and maybe what he said earlier about wanting the era of Jean Run Kandel to arrive isn't just childish nonsense, and so he tells all his soldiers to be careful until they get to the gate, and without saying harsh words, and everyone starts to complain about it, and Geely calls him saying that now they can go, and then they just kind of embarrassed tell them to go, so they asked if it's okay to leave those imposters. Where are they? But the boy says that everything will be fine because it doesn't matter if they are found dead or alive, they will serve as an example for their companions, and he congratulates Gilly for what she did, and she says that they will arrive in a village if they walk for more than 2 hours, and then Jim says that they're going to have to wait there until it stops snowing, so he tells Gilly so she doesn't get so sad because of the escort. It wasn't her fault because even Can, a 9-star knight, didn't notice, and it would still be harder for her. 3-star warrior realizes, he says that it's not a problem either, that he taught them the rule of escorting like a guardian knight, and in that she apologizes again, but Jean thinks to himself that Geely never changes. He says that she's a babysitter for Run Kandel and they follow the destiny of the child they are in charge of. He says that Geely was also his nanny in the past life, that's why she was underestimated by the clan. Because of him, someone who had no talent, however she didn't blame him once. And on the day that he was exiled from June Kandel she was exiled with him, and at that moment she apologized for not being able to serve him properly, that while bowing and apologizing, and he thinks that she was like that so he doesn't want to be too hard on her, but now it's different. Guile has to mature, so she says again that she will accept any punishment he gives for what happened, but he shouts at her telling her not to blame herself and says that this is an order because she can be his babysitter, but she is the only guardian knight that he has now, and if she getting attached to such small things like this she will have problems with an escort in the future, so he asks her not to make him repeat it again, so she feels and says that she will try her best to correct herself, and she thinks that Jean cares about her a lot after all. He said those words for her good, and she thinks she needs to be careful not to cause him any more problems, and then she starts to get all excited, and the boy is happy that she has cheered up and gotten out of that depression. And then he arrives at paused, and Jean returns to thinking about those false guardians and says that if he is right there is a high possibility that he interfered with the transformer Buvard Gaston, and he says that transformation is a privilege of dragons, but not all dragons can transform perfectly, and Buvard is the only one who can transform perfectly, and he used this ability to commit several transformation crimes and brought chaos to the world, and Jim thinks that if it really was Buvard who interfered that will be problematic. After all, he didn't do anything notable so far, and in your life last time when he was 20 years old he was arrested by Vermin's special forces. He thinks that if he makes him his ally he can be useful, but he has no reason to welcome someone who raised his sword against him, and he concludes that before Buvard get into bigger problems he should see if there is anything different from his past life, but he says this while yawning, and Geely tells him that she will be outside if he needs her, but she notices the boy sleeping and sees that he is still one little boy, and that a black cat starts meowing outside the window, and he wakes up realizing that he ended up sleeping. He says that even though he trained so much in the Storm Castle he thinks it's still too much to ask for a 10-year-old body, so so he asks which one it's that noise, and then he sees the cat in the window walking on two legs, and he soon connects the dots, remembering Murakun saying he's going to hide and stay on his tail, so the boy didn't need to worry. So Jim asks is that what he wanted say when he said he was going to hide and follow him. Then he asks if he turned into a cat, but the cat gets even more pissed off, and Jean lets him in, saying he didn't expect that and that's why he was surprised, and he says he thought Murakun was going to disguise himself as a knight or as a servant, but Murakun says that if he did that, the knights of his clan would notice right away. As he continues talking, he ends up tripping and putting his head in the corner of the window, and Gilly opens the door and asks if his young master is fine, and she sees a crazy man with a hurting head next to her young master, and she immediately activates her X-23 mode, asking who is the fool who dares to come after her young master and attacks him. Tell him to confess everything before she rips him thousands of pounds pieces, and she continues asking his purpose, but Jean stops her from waiting. After all, this person, but before he could complete the sentence, MONARCH notices that this is Guile, so he calls her strawberry shortcake, saying that they finally met, and the girl stays without understanding what's up with the strawberry pie, so Jim thinks they're lost. After all, this crazy guy is singing his nanny in front of him, so he makes the necessary introductions, saying that this is the guardian of Runkandel, the black dragon Murakun, and Geely. He doesn't even needs to present, after all the dragon is already treating her like his precious strawberry pie, and Geely apologizes for being disrespectful to the guardian of Runkandel, but the cattle don't worry, after all he will forgive her for sure. Gilly asks why what he's calling her strawberry pie, and he says it's because she makes the most perfect and wonderful strawberry pies, and then Jim realizes why the boy was asking for strawberry pie every day, so Jean asks her to sit down so he can explain, and after she finds out everything he apologizes for having deceived her all this time, but she says she didn't know he had such an exceptional talent, and she talks about magic, the contract with Solder, and a dragon. She is very happy with his babysitter, and Jean says that now she is his cream partner and the clan cannot know that Murakun has awakened and that he is connected to him, and she says that she will be very careful, but Murakun says that she doesn't need to be so nervous about this. She notices and asks if that loud noise from before it was Lord Murakun's transformation being undone, but they are embarrassed to admit that it wasn't like that at all and reveal to her that it was just the cattle dragon that tripped, and Geely goes to Jin's ear to ask if it will be okay to trust him. He says that we'll probably stay. Then they go to the transfer gate of the Mel Kingdom and they thank them for everything the missionaries did and tell them that the compensation for this work will be paid by the Runkandel castle later, and they say that it was a good experience for them too and that they are eager to see the future of the young Runkandel she serves. So he directs a question directly to Gilly and asks why someone with such great skill as hers left the Mac Roland clan and became young Run's nanny Candel, but she says there's no big reason to mention, and he simply gets the message and apologizes for his rudeness. So they say goodbye, and when they arrive at the transfer portal they ask for his ID. Then she shows him a scabbard with the Runkandel symbol, asking him to send them to Carlin in the Hofer Alliance, and then he realizes that that is a servant of the Runkandel and says that it is an honor to meet her, and then they take them to their special seats. Then they say that if they wait for 2 hours they will arrive in the blink of an eye, and tell the boy to have a good trip. So Giles sits next to him and says that she is very worried because he could somehow end up being found out about Lord Murakun and other things, and he asks if she is talking about magic, and she says yes. After all, this is the only thing that no one in the Runkandel clan will allow. He tells her not to worry because he will hide it very well. Someone arrives and he immediately notices that golden emblem on their clothes and realizes that that is the Zipful family. So the boy sits right in front of him and he recognizes that face as being very familiar, and the boy starts to be arrogant, saying that it's not surprising that he doesn't want to go to Rofer. After all, on the way he encounters these pests there, and soon the Murakun pretends to be a normal cat, and the boy says that at least his cat is cute and calls the cat closer, but Murakun slaps the boy's hand and his guards leave in ignorance. But the boy says that everything is fine. Well, after all, it is act of an animal, and he thinks that picking a fight because of that would only get him in trouble, and besides, it would be stupid to draw a sword in front of a Runkandel. He realizes that the boy tried to irritate him out of curiosity to see the reaction, but he realizes that the Runkandel's youngest son is cool-headed. So he introduces himself as Baradin Zipfeld and says that he would like to formally apologize for his rudeness earlier. So the boy realizes that this is Baradin and says that he is a genius wizard and a strong candidate as future patriarch. Zeepel and him is an idol among young mages for having both skills and noble character, and Jean says that he is someone who felt very distant when he was a magus, and he is surprised to meet him when he is still a child, and he thinks that this is an unknown feeling, and the boy says that he understands that and was also curious to know what kind of person he is, but he's happy that the boy is just an idiot, and the boy asks if this is about him, and Jean says that if they end up drawing their swords for cause of your joke, Baradin would end up experiencing wandering around Rofer without an escort, and he would probably have lost at least 2 fingers. So the boy says that this was a very scary joke, but Jean asks him if he thinks he is joking, and the boy soon gets the message and says he will leave a advice for him too, and says that if he meets another Zipfel and has a similar experience, don't cut off his fingers hastily or something like that, as it will only cause problems for your clan. And Jin says that this now it's a very funny joke and asks oh boy if he thinks Jin's father's Iron Rum Kandel and his father Arc Zipfel moved their clans just because of children's fights. That Barajin thinks a little and says that this is true because even with cut fingers he is sure he would only end up with a few gold coins as compensation, and he tells Jim that he taught him something today and he will return that favor someday, but Jim says he doesn't want his payment in the future and tells him to pay now, and the boy agrees to that, and Jim says that until the portal closes activate he would like the boy to be quiet and not disturb his rest. Baradin almost freaks out and stays quiet even though he is silent, saying that he thinks Jin will become a really cool guy in a few years, and he says that if it weren't because of his clans he would have asked him to be your friend. In the meantime you keep your cough so that the boy behaves better. Then he thinks again, saying that in fact Jin could become your eternal rival because he is a Run Kandel, and your guard almost cries with this conclusion, e.g. is surprised because the boy is acting like this in the middle of almost losing his two fingers. He asks if there is something wrong with Zipfel. After all, none of them are healthy, so the intercom announces that the teleportation will begin soon and pain and fainting may occur due to the turbulence of the teleportation. Baradin calls for Jin, saying that he had fun today and says that they will meet again at some point. However, Jin denies it again, saying that he never wants to see him again, and upon arriving at his destination Jin is received by the butler called Petro, and he gives his welcomes the boy to the main house of the Run Kandel clan, the Garden of Swords, and it is said that only those with achievements that have contributed to the prosperity of Run Kandel are given the chance to place their own sword in the Garden of Swords, a garden that symbolizes the dream and honor of all Run Kandel, and it was also Jin's wish to put his sword there when he died, but in his past life he was weak. In addition to having no talent, he could not lead and was not even intelligent. Then he wonders how he thought he could accomplish something just with work. Doru he says that in this life he will make it worth living in this shitty place, so once again he goes in front of his father and his other brothers, and his mother says that she no longer sees him for a long time, and she is called Black Panther Rosa Run Kandel, the lady of the house, and he greets his mother, but in the meantime his father keeps an eye on the cat that is with him and asks if Jin caught the cat on the street, and he says who adopted him, but his father questions why the boy said he adopted instead of catching it. He says that he liked the answer used and says that Run Kandel should maintain such a posture when he gets something, so his mother asks what the cat's name is, and he says it is Nabi Run Kandel, but one of the brothers starts to freak out, saying that he understands that he is young but this is wrong, and asks how the boy dares to name Run Kandel in a viral hit. Then he asks how Geely created Jin, letting him name a mere cat that way, and she can only apologize, so her father tells him to stop and asks to Jin because he named the cat Randall, and the boy just responds that it's so he can be responsible for it because it may just be an animal, but as it's the first life he adopted he feels that his name must carry a great weight, and his father says that this is interesting, but he asks if the boy knows the weight that the name Run Kandel has, and the boy says yes because if Nabi hurt someone it means he has to pay the price. So his father says that Jin seems to have talent for making enemies gives the way his brothers are the staring, and the boy says recognizes that he has a talent for this but says that he also has a talent for killing his enemies, and his father says that everyone must already be at the limit wanting to kill his unscrupulous youngest son. And then 4 years later, at the beginning of the summer of 1794, Jim Run Kandel is already 14 years old. He is a 2-star knight, a low-rank cadet, and so the instructor tells him that his training is finished and says that he did a good job, and the boy asks if they will only train tomorrow, but he says that the training Miss Luna's appointment is scheduled for today and asks if he forgot. Then Jin remembers and says he thinks he's going to eat it, but Garen asks if he's going to eat again with the cadets and says that Madame Rosa seems to be disappointed, but Jin says it's okay. Well, after all he doesn't want to be part of the staring war with his brothers while he eats, and Garen understands this, saying that he will pass on the message to her. In the meantime Bob brings Jin's food, and he says that Bob is a 13-year-old commoner and in soon he will be disqualified during training and stripped of his right as a cadet and expelled, so he asks the boy if it tastes good, and he says yes. For him, he is always grateful to Run Kandel for allowing him to eat meat regularly, and he is also grateful to the young man for always sharing your meat with him. This Jay prevents the boy from stopping that. After all he said that too, so he asks if he memorized any passages or something like that. He tells Bob that sometimes he needs to be concise, after all people despise him because he ever slow down when he's talking, and the boy is surprised by this, and Jin tells him to straighten his posture and be proud to be a guardian knight of the Run Kandel, but the boy says that his grades are low and he's not even a star yet, and Jin says that becoming a Run Kandel cadet cadet is a very difficult task and even when they are in the lowest rank, and he tells the boy that he is elite compared to the other 13-year-olds around the world, and the boy is alone agrees and Jim says no. He is surprised that his clan kicked him out after all. This boy is very docile, however he is surprised how this well of purity went to the High-Ran clan, a different clan of swordsmen, and became the loyal dog of the Vermont Empire, and it is said that he became a merciless mass murderer, and Jean says that when he heard that he became part of the Imperial Guard he was shocked and was also saddened to find out that he decided to leave this RPA better of his own free will, and he says that if he leaves Bope the way he did it's going to be bad, and Jean tells the boy that he is no longer hungry, giving him his food, and he thinks that he will keep an eye on the boy so that he does not get disqualified and expelled this time, because living a shitty life once is enough, and he thinks to himself that the release of spiritual energy is at 2 stars and mana is at 4 stars, but swordsmanship is also at 2 stars. He says that everything is going very smoothly and at this rate he will be able to reach 3-star swordsmanship in 2 years. But before that he meets with Luna, and she says that today's training will be the same as yesterday's, but she reminds him that he needs to treat this training as something different every day. He says he understands, and she tells him to use his mind's eye and tells him to watch it with him, but the boy stays thinking that he will have to adapt to this training that he had never heard of before, and she tells him to look with his mind's eye because for those who live wielding a sword, learning to use their mind's eye is more important than anything else, and she tells him not to open his eyes, but he thinks the mind's eye's a state of enlightenment for a knight of 7 stars and up, but she wants to teach him that while he's only 2 stars, and he also says that besides that the typical mind's eye usually looks like scattered aura, but her sister Luna isn't using aura in his training, so he doesn't understand anything, but he changes his thinking and says that he trusted her, so he is sure that she has something in mind, so he will just focus on training for now, and the day will come when that he will understand this training. And at the end of the training she says that he did very well and tells him to come back now, and she says that as expected she knew he would do well, but he always exceeds her expectations, and she says that he has concentration and great posture that is not seen in 2-star knights, and she says that with this potential he will be able to understand in a few years. She hopes that her little brother continues to evolve. So with the cadets everyone is tense, because it is said that the training fight of that day will be worth most of the final score, and a good score there would be the quick way for him to become a guardian knight, so that's why everyone is tense, and it is also said that that day will be very important for Jean. After all, Madame Rosa said that if he manages to defeat all the top 10 that day he will be able to move up to intermediate training next year, so Jean is happy with that and realizes that Bellope is already like that again. He says that it's no big deal after all, he will make sure that the boy don't be expelled, but it still hurts that he is not at all confident, and the instructor warns that the fight that day will have 3 rounds and everyone will change partners every time, and in addition all the 10 best fighters will face Jin duels. That G notes that they are not bad at all, and they were not given the reason to become cadets for no reason, so at the end of the duels he separates the 10 people he selected, then he tells Jim to prepare, and the boy starts easily defeating him, and he thinks that the biggest record was 8 people, so he only needs to defeat 2 more, and he says that to do that he must be very careful with a specific opponent. In that Misa goes to him. He thinks that Misa Milkan is an elite warrior who will complete all the training. Cadet in the future will immediately become a guardian knight, and she says that she would be very happy to defeat him that day, and he thinks that the fight against the table is the most important of this test, and soon the 2 start brandishing their swords. He says that table is stronger than before, but it's still not like he can't defeat her, but he says that in the meantime the problem is that he has to defeat 8 more people after her, so he wants to end everything quickly, and she asks him why he's using a simple attack all the time because he's always used different skills before. She asks him why he would be doing this, and she thinks he's doing it on purpose but doesn't know what the reason is, and then she concludes that he thinks he's doing it on purpose, won't be able to defeat him, and thinks that the boy is belittling him, so she stays and goes after him with everything, but the boy manages to fight back very well, and Mesa thinks that he can't lose like that again and will overcome the young master this time by going all out in an attack for up, but Jean breaks her sword. She wonders how he did it, but he puts the sword on the girl's neck and says it was a great fight. He also says he won't be able to use that sword anymore, and she realizes he did something incredible for while their swords, if they collided several times, he always continued attacking the same point of hers, and she thinks that they don't have that much difference in strength and resistance. Then she notices that she lost because he lacks precision and persistence, and she asks how that would be possible and notes that it really is a run. Candle makes him different, and she tells him that she will train and defeat him one day, and says that he can't just stand by and let him win every time, and Jim thinks that it was the way he planned because with his current self he would duel against 10 cadet is not a task so easy, and winning the fight unilaterally against Misa he gave everyone the impression that they would lose if they fought him one by one, so he gets to the 10th combatant and says that I'm glad everything went well with that. Gorgon congratulates him, saying that this will help him to have a real intermediate run Candle class at the beginning of next year, and he congratulates the boy in advance, and Jean tells the waiter to take care of him until then, but he says that it will be lunchtime soon, so we'll finish training there. But Jean asks how long they tin until lunch and Garen says that they have about 10 minutes. Then Jean says he wants to fight someone and Garen asks who he has in mind, and then the boy shouts for Balop and the boy gets scared wondering why. Then he calls him saying that he wants to fight the boy, but Jean says that the only way for them to survive Run Kandel will be this way and tells the boy to go and fight him because he will destroy him like a piece of trash. And then he goes to the arena and stays, wondering why Jean wants to fight him and wonders if it's because he's weak or because he's trying to mold him. And Jean talks to the boy saying he's really tired from fighting 10 cadets and he, on the other hand, is very tired. Well, despite that, he's going to be stronger than Bop and that's why he wants to fight him, and the boy keeps wondering what that means. But Xing doesn't even give him space to think, going after him and attacking him with all his might. And Balop wonders why he's doing this, but Jay doesn't leave room for questions and continues attacking with everything and says that the boy is defending himself very well. Jean picks up rocks and hits the boy in the eye, making him temporarily unable to see with red eyes after having been beaten a lot on the ground, and asks why his young master is doing this to him. But Jean asks if he thought he just called him for a duel, and he said he wanted to fight the boy, and at that moment he says that he could have killed Balop, and he tells the boy to get up because he will only show mercy once. Then the boy gets up, invoking his aura, and everyone is surprised by this because the Bop time has completely changed. So Misa tells the instructor that they need to stop this because the young master may be in danger, but Jim says that this is an order and asks everyone to keep what they saw there a secret, and Garen agrees with this, and Balop asks if that is what his master wants, and Jean he speaks what is that and if he knows how to use aura he shouldn't hold back. So the boy says he made a mistake because if he wanted to fight him he should do it before having fought 10 people. He attacks the boy again with a lot of rage, breaking the Jin sword in half. Then he says that he didn't expect it to be at this level because he already knew that Bop would be very skilled because whenever he fights against another cadet he analyzes the skills and movement of his opponents, but he didn't expect the boy to already could use aura. And while the boy attacks her again, he realizes that Bop always loses by a very small margin, and Jean, even with his sword in pieces, attacks Balop again with a stump and attacks the boy's hand while he feels pain in the area of the blow. Jean grabs him, giving him a rear naked choke at the boy, almost putting him to sleep. Then while Bop kittens in front of him he asks why Jean stopped because he thought he wanted to really fight and go to the end, so he asks if it's fun to play with people, but Jean says that of course no. Then the boy asks why he did this, but Jean says that it hurts trying to stimulate people like that and it's much more painful than he thinks. So the boy asks what Jean knows about him to torture him like that, and Jean says that as he says he doesn't know him very well but he knows one thing, and he says that you can only show kindness when you are strong, and Bop is weaker than him and also kinder, and he likes that in the boy, but you can't survive in this hell just by being kind. He tells Balop that hope he gets strong enough to protect this feeling in him and everyone there. They apologize for being hard on him about this. The boy starts crying. The maids arriving with the food are surprised as the training isn't over yet and asks if they should come back later, but Jean says it's okay, they can set up lunch, and Bop for in turn he tells Jean that he can get his own food today, and Jean is happy saying that he will also get the boy's portion of this. Can goes directly to the patriarch to inform him of everything Jean did, and his father starts to laugh saying that he understands that this is the boy's belief because while he walks the path of a dominator he will take care of the weak, and the patriarch thinks he will have to check if this belief has any value, so he tells Can to return and transmit this to him. He says he will give the first mission for Jean. Then in January 1795 he was recognized as a 3-star knight at the age of 15, and during his first vacation the cadets returned home. However, there are those who work on themselves with personal training, and he also says that when things happen for the intermediate class, instead of wooden swords they need to use a real sword that is good for him, so some cadets asked for their own swords, and he says that he also had to find a good sword for him in his clan's warehouse. But Luna appears to the boy saying that it was difficult and hard work to find a sword for him, and he says that his sister asked him to let her choose his sword a month ago when she was begging a lot for it, and the boy was not at all excited about that idea. It is, he says that she certainly has better eyes for the sword than he does, so he knows that she will make a better choice than he would, but when she puts the sword down it is a gigantic sword the same size as her, and he is actually scared by it. And she says that this is a sword that was once known as a ball massacre, and when she was his age she used it a lot, so she invented the Machado sword when she was the boy's age, and she says that you can say that this is the origin of the Krantle she uses now, and she asks him if he liked it, but the boy says he's really grateful that she chose this sword for him, but it doesn't seem quite right, so she starts to get sad, saying that it's okay, after all, it was just a joke, but he realizes that it certainly wasn't a joke, and she says that the ball massacre is actually a very good sword and it's a little heavy, but it shouldn't be a big deal about it. She keeps looking at him but doesn't show much excitement, and then she says that everything is fine and she's going to show him a sword different than she. He says he thought a lot about it. What would be the most suitable sword for him? A sword that is only good for the boy. She says he thought about it. After all, how did he choose the Barisata? That sword is the sister of the Barisata that the first patriarch used the Bradamanti, and she says that he must like it, so he says that of course after all this is an incredible sword even among the several master swords that his clan has, and he thinks that this one sword he had to get. No matter who, however, his sister did the right thing by personally choosing the Bradamanti for him, and he says that the Bradamanti and the Barisata are both swords that are better to use with spiritual energy, and he says that if he chose the sword himself he would have wants to give up because of the opposition of his other brothers. So he says that the Bradamanti is a sword that the other brothers also want, and because she chose it for him, he doesn't know how he could pay her, but she says that she doesn't need it, and also says that Jean still seems uncomfortable about her and it makes her sad, but he says that's not it, but she says she's already sad and he's going to have to console his big sister's broken heart. He asks what she means by that, but she tells him to close his eyes because they're going to start her training, so she asks if he knows what she's going to say and he confirms that he does, but now she's going to teach him one more thing and he asks what it is, and she says that among the brothers who are busy trying to destroy each other, he also has brothers who love him unconditionally, and she tells him to make sure to engrave it in his heart again, and she also tells him not to make his sister sad again, and he starts to apologize once again, and she says that even before he was born she was already lonely among her family and she hopes that he is not lonely like her, and that is why she is doing this. She hopes that he understands, and in this she tells him to continue training and tells him to see with his mind's eye, and after all this the boy goes to Morakan and asks what he thinks of that sword, so he tells him to put it away because the boy still lacks a lot of spiritual control, and he says that for the boy to use the Bradaman properly he needs at least 3-star spiritual energy, but he is still a 2-star kid, and he tells the boy that he can barely imitate the awakening of the sword, but the boy says that he feels he is very close to the 3-star spiritual energy. He says that he should be able to use it soon, so the Murakan says that's a very arrogant attitude and sends the boy pay attention. After all, the Barisata and the Bradamanti are not swords that anyone can use just because they want to, and he says that 3-star spiritual energy is the minimum, and until he reaches at least 5-star spiritual energy he only uses it as a sword normal. So the boy tries to argue saying that he is not that patient, and he asks what will happen if he reaches the 5-star spiritual level at the end of the year. Then Dragon starts to get pissed and says that even if someone who won first place on a children's spiritual energy competition and doesn't eat anything their spiritual energy instead of food, he wouldn't be able to do that, and he says he's saying that because he cares about the boy, and he says that from now on the boy shouldn't say things that it would even make a dog laugh. So he asks if he understands and tells him not to be stubborn, but the boy takes the book he was reading and starts trying to tear it up and asks him what he was saying about being a child, so Murakan asks him to stop with that and put the book down, but Jim gets there and he asks what happened, and she says that the Garen instructor is looking for him and normally he would come in person, but he says that the boy needs to go in person since he needs to explain the plan with the maps. So the boy wonders why, what plan is he talking about, and she says that's it. She says that the Garen instructor assigned him his first mission, and she says that the boy will leave as soon as the vacation is over, and he is surprised but thinks it's time since he achieved 3-star fencing. But once the holidays are over it's strange, and Geely says that the missions are difficult. They are normally assigned when starting the intermediate class, and he says that maybe this is happening because your transfer has been confirmed, so he says he will take a look at you. Tell Guile to wait with Murakan. Then the boy goes to Garen saying that he heard that he was assigned to a mission, and then Garen greets the boy saying that a mission was assigned to him and 9 other beginner class cadets, and is told that he will conducting this mission by dividing into 2 groups is an escort mission around the southern border of the Kingdom of Zon, and the boy says that the Kingdom of Zon is close to the land of beast men and the marked area is close to the territory of the tribe of White Wolf. Then he says that it is a place that would not send beginners to prison anyway, and he also says that this is much earlier than normal and it is very difficult for a first mission, and he says that in his group there are cadets who are in the bottom half of the class in terms of notes, and he also says that Bob has inconsistent notes, that it's almost as if someone did it on purpose, and he thinks that this is an order and thinks that his struggle with Balop was forgotten by his father, so he wonders if this is his way of testing you, and he says he's going to show your father clearly that his belief won't waver. Then, 4 days later, from the south, Jim says that the objective of the mission is to search for the successor of the Bill clan from the Kingdom of Zon Sember Bill, and as soon as they arrive they will organize the base camp in the central region of the frontier, and when they finish each division will begin their search, and once a day they will send a man back to report what they found, and Jean tells them not to call the boy young anymore, master, and yes, captain, so he says that the wounded will stay in the camp and get enough rest, and that's all, and now they will hope that their target is alive. So at the first stop Bob says that then he saw a tribe of man beast called a D water, and Jean stays impressed by this and says that these guys are the type that avoid predators and have docile personalities, so there is no danger in seeing members of the White Wolf tribe, and he tells Bop that their relocation will be delayed a little because of the snow, and then he sends the boy go to the base 2 hours before and move to the 13th zone, and everyone else he orders to search the 13th zone. Then he says there is something strange because this mission is directly under his father's orders, but everything is going very well, and he says he thought this mission was for him to test, so he wonders if he's wrong, and these stupid beasts come to them saying that they look like beggars and say that they feel sorry for the boys giving them food as a gift, and Gene says that he will definitely repay the pleas. Sometime he says that if they pass the 13th zone they will be in the territory of the beast men, and as beginner cadets of the training class they are not peers against them. He says that there is no need to rush to get results, and he will investigate the rest of the area for the next 4 days. Then Bellop arrives calling the boy and says that the 2nd Division was ambushed, and Gene tells them all to get ready to leave and asks how the situation is. He says that currently the 2nd Division split up while fleeing, and one of those who escaped arrived at the base camp, reported the situation, and Gene asks if the ambushers were beastmen, but Bellop says that they were not humans and there were 3 of them, but with just 3 of them they won, and Gene says that they didn't ambush them like that, they must have more people. So he orders Eddington and David to go back to the equipment and patrol the place, and if they see enemies he forbids them to act because they must first report directly to him, and he thinks there are many entities to consider an ambush and asks what their objective is. After all, it is strange that they attack the 2nd Division instead of the 1st where he is, so he says that whoever it is he will make pay for messing with Runkandel. Then they see blood on the way, and Bellop is worried about the table. After all, she could be dead, but Jim tells him to calm down as the blood hasn't dried yet and there is no sign of bodies or pieces of human flesh, and he says there was a fight there and the 2nd Division fled, and according to the footprints it was just an ambusher, and they tell Jim that they found used spares and it looks like Hoofister products, and then he asks where she found it and she says she found it on the west side. He says that this means that the 2nd Division was ambushed and was treating there. Then they detected another ambush and they fled to the west, in which he tells Sierra to go to Eddington and David to report the current situation, and he calls Bellop to go with him, and on the way they notice something and realize that it is the 2nd Division, and he says yes, but the table is not there, and besides there is another ambush. Now Gene tells Bellop to close his eyes for a moment, and after 2 seconds knock down the guy on his left. Then he thinks about a property of the spirit that Murakin told him something involved with spirits destructive and cutting power increases and the presence of the object slowly decreases. He hits one of the men and Bob quickly appears on top of the other, and he even tries to counterattack, but Gene catches him from behind, and when he falls in agony Gene asks if they are okay, and one of the boys says they are, but they took the table, they couldn't see their faces, and Gene says that's enough and they should worry about reinvigorating themselves. With this he starts to wake up that man who was below from him, so he asks for help, but Gene asks if the man wants to be spared, and seeing how he cares about his own life he can already say that he's not a Zipfel's idiot subordinate, so he says he's going to give him 2 choices. The first one they tell him to who work on the objective and location of the base, and only one of them dies, and in the second they are silent and everyone dies including the one related to him. Says that he is a man of his word and his name is Gene Runkandel, and he swears by the name and honor of his clan, so the man understands and asks for him to ensure that his family survives, and he says that he is part of a revolutionary organization known as Kinzello. So Shin says that Kinzello is a terrorist organization that was active around the time of his death, and he says that he is sure that they were killed by the Emperor of Zon and became known in the world for murdering and plundering the citizens. They call themselves a revolutionary organization, but Kinzello's revolution is to make their own king become the king of the world. So Gene asks if they attacked Randall's cadet to cause an uproar in Zon's kingdom, and the man says that he is just a low-rank member, so they didn't tell him much, and even though he knows the location of the main base, his camp is at the entrance to the Beastman's territory, that they are approximately 24-star knights and mages. And then Gene asks one more thing. They ask why they took the table. He says that that is his declaration, that he says that they needed it to declare their revolution, that they were ordered to capture all the female cadets alive. One of the members gets very angry and Gene says he will keep his promise, and then rips the guy's head off, and he asks how long it has been since the table was kidnapped, so they say it will be an hour, and Gene says they must still be at the entrance to the Beastman's territory, and after recovering he asks the boys to go to the main house for help, and he asks if Gene goes there alone, and he says that the ambushers were all at least 4-star knights, and he says he had around 20 of them, and that's exactly why they say it will be impossible for him to take care of it alone, and one of them says they are just cadets and death and missions happen frequently, and asks him not to go, and Jim says that what he said is really true, but in this situation where a cadet was taken as a prisoner, the son of a Runkandel can't do nothing, so he says that he is much stronger than they think, so he sends the boys to him. Obey. He will consider any question's disobedience, and he tells Bell that since the entire 2nd Division is injured he is the strongest among all the remaining cadets, so he must maintain his posture and be be their leader. He says he will keep that in mind, and soon the boy leaves from there hoping it's not too late to be able to recover the table. So he thinks about the number of enemies and notices that he's at 3 levels in swordsmanship, 4 levels in mana and 3 in spiritual release, and thinks he's evolving quickly, but no. He knows if he will be able to defeat them all at once, and rescuing the table is his priority, so he will fight as little as possible and focus completely on finding her. He activates his seismic sense and says that he will also conjure a purgatory wind over there, that they went through the plains, and say that they haven't gotten very far yet. But while the boy was moving forward he was shot by an arrow but soon manages to escape. Then they notice that a cadet from Runkandel and orders them to capture him because he uses magic to finish them all off, and one of the guys wonders how Runkandel is using magic, so they try not to care about this, just kill the boy. But Jean easily turns the tables and starts defeating several of them, so the wizard asks everyone to get away because he goes to use magic, but Jim manages to control his spell. He kills another one of the kidnappers. Then he goes up to the wizard and pulls him using his fire, and the wizard notices that if the fire doesn't work he will pierce him with ice, throwing several stakes, but Jean manages to do so. Use a barrier to stop him, and the magician, he doesn't understand how he manages to do this and how he manages to get through his spell, but it's too late. He ends up running out of ideas for the answer, and soon Jim realizes that the 15 less don't seem to have any intention of hiding their trails, and they ask if they are belittling them, maybe because they don't have real experience, and he says that they got together with too many and started riding in carriages. So he says that Cincolos is an organization that has a clear hierarchy, and he says that there is a great chance that the loot they get would be distributed by level, since they would not get their hands on loot intended for people of higher level, and this is the only chance he has of rescuing Misa still unharmed. So he says that they are approaching the Beastman's territory and their base is probably close to there, in which case he will distract them and create an opening to rescue the table. Then he casts magic on them, making a giant fire. He tells you that if he does that, they will probably show up to put out the fire, and that's what really happens. They start to wonder where that fire came from, asking to get water, and Jean notices a much bigger man on top of one of the houses saying that they can't even put out the fire properly and telling him to the mages cast ice and water magic. Then he realizes that the boss is there, but the fire doesn't want to go out, so while he's making fun of the other men, Jean appears behind him and simply Vasco Man. He finally finds the key that he's going to leave behind. He enters the dungeon. He soon goes looking for the table and notices a cellar and finds the girl down there. She asks why he is there. After all, it is very dangerous, but he tells her not to worry about him. He asks if the girl can walk and she says yes, but she can't handle it. He says he will support the girl, but soon they hear a deafening sound, so she asks him to promise her something, and she says if things get really dangerous she wants him to abandon her because there is no one who can die there, and he says that it is dangerous, so first they will get out of there. And when they get outside he sees a very catastrophic scene. He says that this is an act of the beast men and they are clearly a tribe of warriors, and then they notice the person causing all that, the White Wolf tribe, and a gigantic wolf with a sledgehammer in his hand appears. Then Mesa says she will buy him time and tells the boy to hurry up and run away, but he hits her in the back of the head, making the girl faint. Then the White Wolf starts talking, calling the men of worms and saying that they can't even put out the fire properly, and he says that they don't deserve to stay alive. So he asks if it was the brat who did it, and Jean says that he was the son of Soren Runkandel. Jean Runkandel. Then he tells the beast man to reveal his name, and the wolf in turn recognizes the name of the Runkandel, saying that he is one of the puppies of that family. And a few days before the mission in the main house of the Runkandel clan, he was already training with his sword when his dark energy began to take over. Tell her about this. The Murican arrives, kicking him, calling the boy an idiot, asking if he wants to die. After all, he thought he had left. Of course he doesn't have a high enough level to try to awaken his sword without care, and he says that if he does that he will be caught in the congestion of spiritual energy. He says that if he doesn't want to die because of this he shouldn't try to awaken his sword again, and so the boy agrees to this. But in the current scenario he finds himself in front of a white wolf who is talking, who is going to catch the most valuable prey of the Runkandel family. He says that his name is almost Truka, a warrior from the Truka tribe who has talked about the White Wolf tribe, and they say that they are a tribe born for battle and for massacre, and martial power of an adult white wolf is around 6 stars, and the White Wolf tribe is known to hate the Runkandel, and the reason is that the first patriarch of the Runkandel killed the great white wolf Javier, who they worshipped as a god. So the Jean realizes that it would be impossible to try to escape from him with the table, so the wolf says he will offer it to Javier's altar later to console his soul, and the wolf tells him to choose whether he will have an honorable fight against him or will be destroyed while he tries to escape like a coward. But Jean says he will fight honorably, pulling out his sword, and then the wolf is happy, saying that he is a Rumkandel who knows honor, so he goes after the boy saying they are going to have a good fight, but he can only dodge that monstrous attack, and then when he got it right, facing him to attack with his sword. But he says that as a leader of the White Wolf tribe it is very difficult to block a single attack, so they start to exchange more and more blows, but Jean thinks he can still win. After all, he has one more in his hand, manga and your enemy doesn't know, and he says he has his sister's pendant magic and spiritual energy, and he says it's not worth using the pendant in a small crisis like this. And if he can't solve a little problem like that, he won't be worthy of being above others and magic too. It is not the right thing to use there, because with only 4-star magic he cannot pierce the skin of a white wolf, and if his clan sends people to investigate Kinzalo, the Guardian Knights will definitely find traces of magic, so he will end up exposed by breaking one of the clan's rules. Then he only has one option left, which would be spiritual energy. So when the wolf attacks again, he says that he will awaken his sword, and the wolf tells Jean that he has a good sword, but he says that it does not match the symbol of the black sword, but it is still more resistant than it looks. So exchanging more and more blows, Jean continues to feel terrified. He remembers the feeling of the sword awakening that night. Then the wolf tells him that it is over, because with this white sword he is going to sacrifice him at Javier's altar. But Jean can remember the feeling he had when he awakened the sword. So the wolf wonders what is that thing that is surrounded by a black mass that doesn't let him see anything while he is being bitten. So he is split in half by Jean. He says that until recently he also didn't know that his clan's emblem was a black sword, and the wolf, now with his abdomen open, calls the boy a curse and asks what he did, but Jim just replies that it was a good thing. Fight then. Some time later, the boy is suffering a lot with the spiritual convergence. After all, everything has a price, and several voices appear in the boy's head, calling him damn useless and asking him what he plans to do with such pathetic abilities. They say that he is an idiot who doesn't have no sense of reality, and they say that he is the disgrace of his clan, and he continues to be tormented with memories of the past of his life where he was a failure, where his brothers said that they were ashamed of being born of the same mother. Then the Murican appears in front of him asking if I hadn't told him. After all, when a child who doesn't have spiritual energy like him draws a sword, he will end up paying the price, and the Murican asks if he is planning to die from the congestion of spiritual energy there, and he sends the boy wakes up because it will be the end if he lets his mind go, and he says he already told the boy what he needs. Then Jean starts releasing spiritual energy and starts circulating that energy. He says he can't release it properly because he keeps being distracted by the spiritual energy of the surroundings, but he cannot be distracted and tries again, and so he gradually calms down and tries again and again and again until finally he manages to get rid of all the pain. He says that the pain has disappeared at the time what it ended up making him a little nervous, but his body is the same as always, but he feels like it is completely full of spiritual energy. And he also says that he is not having any problem walking, so he goes back to the table, but he asks who is there when he hears a noise and a boy appears asking him to spare his life, and Jean soon asks if he is also a Kinzalo, but the boy says no, and his name is Semberbil from the Bill clan in the kingdom of Zon. So Jean notices that the objective of his mission has just ended appear in front of him. He says that he is Jean Run Candel and he came to look for the boy, and the boy is completely happy. After all, he is safe, and Jean says that he completely forgot about the boy because of the Kinzalo group, and the boy starts saying that he will never forget his debt to Jean, and he says it's nothing final. They're paid to do this, and now they're going to get back to it. He asks the boy how he was kidnapped by the group 15, and he says he followed his loved one there. So Jim asks if they were running away, but the boy says that the truth is that his beloved died 2 years ago, but the girl he was after was exactly the same as when she was alive, and he knows that this may seem crazy, but it's true. He says there's no way he could have been confused. So Jean starts to connect the dots, saying that everything was the same. This must be a Buvard Gaston, the Transformer thing. They say they probably kidnapped Sember for money, and he starts asking if Bovard and the Kinzalo group have some kind of connection. He says it is the second time who is having contact with Buvard. He has a bad feeling, and he says that he should meet Buvard in person to see what kind of guy he is. So he thinks that the fragmented workshop that he runs should be in the capital of the Curano Duchy, and he says that he should try find an opportunity while in the intermediate training class. So the boy continues to thank him. Jean says that his clan is sending reinforcements for him, and the boy thinks that Jean called the Guardian Knights to save him, but he thinks who went to the table, and the boy starts to say that he will always remember this meeting and tells Jean to go to him if he needs anything or his help, and Jean says he will do that. So with Gilly, she congratulates him for fulfilling his first mission and then puts him to take a shower because the boy must be tired, but the Murican calls the boy very serious, and Jean tries to hide it by wanting to pet him, but the Murican bites the boy and he throws the cat on the wall, and Mana himself gives an addendum speaking to don't mistreat animals, but the Murican is a dragon, so he's fine with that. Jean asks why he bit him, and the cat asks if he's crazy, and he says he thought he told him not to release spiritual energy, and he asks how many times he warned him, and asks also if he wanted to die. After all, that was a warning for his own good, but Jean asks him to listen, so he asks what he should listen to. After all, what could be more important than the life of the sole Solderet contractor? So Gilly goes to assistance from boy asking him to stop because he just got back, so Murican asks her to stay out of this. After all, this is serious, and then Jean says that a cadet was kidnapped in front of his eyes and asks him if he should just sit there and do nothing because he's worried that she would end up in big trouble, but Murican asks about his pendant and asks if it's just an accessory like that's just meant to hang around your neck, but the boy says it seems like a waste after all he doesn't know. When he goes to meet a much more powerful enemy, then the dragon freaks out when he talks about waste but ends up fixing his spine, and Jean asks if you are really so shocking, but a doubt appears in his mind asking how he knows that he has awakened the sword, and Murakin says that his spiritual energy jumped from 3 stars to half of the 4 stars, and he asks how he could not notice, so Jim says that he felt like he was filled with spiritual energy, but to think that he would go up 1 star, and he just tells him that he should be grateful that Soldaret kept him alive, and he says that out of 10 people who experienced spiritual energy congestion, or 11 now with him, 9 of them died, and then Jean says that he is probably the second, and he asks who would be the first, asking if he would be the first patriarch, but the dragon says he is wrong and he himself survived. He also says that Timar would have died, so the boy notices that they too are not so indifferent and tells him not to worry. Because he doesn't want to suffer that pain anymore, so he says he's going to wash, and the Murakin gets even angrier talking to Moreo's pie that she needs to starve him until he learns his lesson, but she leaves saying she needs to prepare the meal of the young master, and he lies there on the ground completely desolate at being left behind. And then 2 other people from the main house begin to wonder how it makes sense that Jean fought against a warrior from the White Wolf tribe and won. But one person says that it doesn't make sense and that maybe it was a bandit wearing a wolf skin, and they can't see how a 3-star novice knight would kill the White Wolf tribe member, but the other person says that there is actually a way that this could. Is it possible that she says that the guy Jim faced could be particularly weak, and this is any Run Kandel, the 9th bearer of the clan's flag, and I say that it still doesn't make any sense. And it's even more unbelievable that the mother has just believed it straight away, and Annie agree with this by asking the twins. It comes up if they also agree, and they certainly nod positively, and then Raytona asks if Jean would have really killed that wolf, and Raytona says that he could be a monster, but this exaggerates even for him, but he says that the problem is not if he did he really kill a member of the White Wolf tribe or not. Apparently he's going to the intermediate class now, and they think it's going to be over for them if he comes to the same class, and then they get depressed about it, and his sister calls him an idiot. Asking the 2 of them are whispering, wondering if they are that scared of Jin going to the intermediate class, and they vehemently deny it, but Mi says they can be honest in front of their big sisters, and she says that is the best because what she hates most are liars' tongues, because it makes her want to rip them out, and they soon confess that they are very scared of Jean. Yan asks if they want her sister's help, and they ask how she would help. She says she will lend it, especially their slaves, for them to use, and it is said that the intermediate class of Run Kandel is purely survival of the most abito. It is made up of a wide spectrum of cadets from 3 to 5 stars, and has both newly entered cadets and cadets who have been stuck in the class for 10 years, and Mi and Yen got some of this cadet who couldn't climb, and they abuse them as their slaves, and she says that they can catch him and finish off Jim, because she also has a bad feeling about the boy, but she says that if they don't take care of it properly, it's better to be prepared for the consequences. In the meantime, Jim thinks that since he was successful in his first mission, his promotion to the intermediate class is certain, and besides, he has achieved 4-star spiritual energy, and in order to properly extract his spiritual energy, he needs to achieve star fencing within a maximum of 5 years. He says that 6-star fencing means he is an excellent swordsman, and starting at 7-star he enters the rank of a master Padachinos, but these are special marks only for normal people, and starting with 8 stars the person is considered as irregular, and things change completely, and then there are not even 100 in the end 10 stars among the 2 billion people in the entire continent, and only a person has surpassed this standard entirely in the demigod realm, the Genesis gentleman, and he thinks that in this life he will reach the Genesis rank or even go up. Furthermore, he says that the first bridge to cross would be his promotion, and the twins are in the class intermediate, so he says that he already knows, even if he hasn't experienced it, as soon as he enters the intermediate class, his brothers, not only the twins, will try to keep him under control, and he says that the beginner class is full of young children of similar level, so there was a friendly atmosphere, but in the intermediate class being soft won't work, and there is a place where only strength and skills work, and he only has one job. He will have to dominate the intermediate class with power, and already in his mother's room Jean will see she and her. He says that he heard that he completed his mission safely, and says that he had excellent results. He thanks his mother. She says that according to the report she received from Petro, he refused the suggestion to change rooms, and she says that like the boy, you know, that room is only allowed for those who can become the future patriarch, and it has been empty since Joshua used it when he was a child, and she says she would like him to use it now, so he thanks her, but he says he will have to refuse. She asks why does he speak, which may be a great room, but at the end of the day it's just a room, and to him the room seems a bit much, so she asks him if he really doesn't want the room, and he says he's already made up his mind, and she tells him to leave. After he leaves, she says she can't tell if her youngest son is very greedy or not, because the room she suggested is the older one's room, a room only allowed for the child who will be responsible for the Run Kandel in the future, and he must know that at the moment once he steps there he will have the support that the room deserves, but at the same time he will be the target of all the children who didn't get the room. So she feels that he must have realized that she was testing him, and she says that now she wants to see how he does in the intermediate class. And with the cadets, Jim says starting tomorrow he will be in the intermediate class, and that place has different types of factions. He says that they will be seen as his faction and will have to endure all types of insults and torments, but they should not fear because he will not just let it, and they will stop as soon as he manages to completely conquer the intermediate class, and until then they must stay in a group of 3 until after training time. Avoid walking around alone so they can understand the message. So already in the intermediate class, Zed Run Kandel talks to everyone, and he says that 10 newbies will join them this year and 27 apprentices have dropped out, and the newbies must learn the lifestyle of an intermediate cadet from their seniors, and he says that his only job is to teach and judge their swordsmanship, and, except for murder, any situations or incidents must be resolved between themselves. They're being noisy and he's full of malice to try to overturn their will, and he notices that even his brothers are so there, and he notices that the guy next to them must have been a cadet for a long time, and he doubts that they have a recruit, and he wonders if they are receiving help from the older sisters and he says that he is sure that their intention was to destroy the rookie's self-esteem, but then he must show them that they are very mistaken, and he simply starts walking around holding his sword, and the twins start to ask why he is coming to them, and they force themselves not to be upset because now they have the support of their older sisters. In this, Jean draws his sword and cut off that cadet's hand borrowed from the sisters, and everyone is in disbelief at this. Even Zed, and he himself doesn't realize he lost his hand until he sees it falling to the ground screaming in pain, and Jean thinks that they are the ones who should be careful and not himself, and then Tana asks if Jean he went crazy and asks why he suddenly used his sword, but Jean simply asks what the cadet's name is, and he says he's a Kai Jean Romulo, and Jean asks if he knows why he cut him, but in the middle of the two Daytona's conversation he asks if he's ignoring him and send him draws his sword again, but Jean looks at them and asks if they can't see what he's talking about with Kajin now, and he says he'll gladly accept a duel later, so he tells them to stay quiet for now, but Raytona starts calling him bastard and starts to ask how he dares to act like that after cutting his cadet, and when he realizes that he said nonsense he immediately stops, but Jim asks what he means by his cadet, so he asks again, asking if that friend there did part of Big Brother's faction, and he says he simply cut him off because he felt bloodthirsty the way he was there looking. So everyone around notices that this is a battle for hegemony, and Zed realizes that while they were trying to destroy his little brother's self-esteem, instead they who learned their lesson. He says that thanks to one of the brothers, Tana, Kajin became part of the faction of the brothers Tana publicly, so Jin's actions were not taken as random, but instead it became part of the long tradition of Run Kandel, the battle for hegemony, and he did something really bold. He tells all the cadets to listen because he is Jean Rum Kandel, and he says that they can point their swords at him or even try to ambush him just like now. However, he tells them to be aware because if they show even the slightest hostility he won't hesitate to cut them off just like he just did in this. Zed calls Jean out on his title, and he asks if the boy thinks he can act like that in front of him, and the boy says yes, and Zed asks why, and Jean says no. He thinks he fought against his older brothers but against the old man, and Zed realizes that he is saying something very interesting there and imposes his sword, thus telling the boy to explain himself, and depending on his answer he may cut off his head there. Now Jim says that despite him being part of the cadets he arrived at the intermediate class to do his hazing, so the boy took it as an attack from Zed, and Zed starts to swing his sword but Jean doesn't even move, getting just a light cut on his cheek, and Zed asks if he has any problem with that. After all, he's causing a commotion just because I didn't like him instigating the hazing, but Jim says it's right because he wasn't the least bit displeased. It's like Zed said in that the instructor asks why he cut a cadet instead pointing his sword at him, and Jim says it's because he still can't defeat him, because if he thought he had a chance against him instead of Kajim or the Tana brothers he would have cut Zed himself, and he says the boy doesn't seem to value your life or him. He overestimates his position as the patriarch's son, but Jean denies this second option, saying that he simply considered it because he is a much stronger opponent and this does not correspond to the values of a Rum Kandel and Zed. He asks if he is saying that a life can be taken in the blink of an eye but honor lasts forever, so he says the boy is very foolish and he calls his reason rude, but this reason made his uncle happy, so he says he recognizes the boy and says he is worthy of living like a Run Kandel, and tells the rest of the cadets not to forget what they saw today because they saw with their own eyes a Run Kandel, and he says that what the boy showed is their true identity as sword demons. He tells the cadets to fill up all day and don't forget their identities, so he says that they are dismissed and the real training will start tomorrow, and the Tana twins are not happy about it, but G gives them some advice saying that now they can find their older sisters scary, but he asks if this will be like this forever, and he tells the boys not to just see what's in front of them but to think about the consequences while choosing their actions. And when Jean returns to his quarters he tells Geely that he started a battle for hegemony with the Tana brothers, and he says that it seems that behind the Tana brothers are the older sisters and Mio, and Geely asks if he is sure about that, and he says that he cut a cadet who was with them, but seeing this he did part of the factions his of sisters, but thanks to his brother's mistake, he is now part of the Tana brothers faction. He bets that An and Mio will be great when they find out. He says that, to begin with, there's no way the Tana brothers would have a 5-star knight as a subordinate. And he says that normally boys only pick on people weaker than him, so Ji understands that the two are acting as flag bearers, and she says that it is an implicit rule for flag bearers to only fight other flag bearers, and Jean says that it's okay, because the fact that his sisters are trying to keep an eye on him is good news for the boy, and he says that he managed to deal a big blow to them today, and says that it's not like they can come and intimidate them personally since they are both flag bearers, and he says that the best thing they can do is probably use their authorities as flag bearers to change the schedule and difficulty of his mission so that it is more likely that he will die, or at least be injured, but several high difficulty missions. They are individual, and these missions mean that there will be no one watching him, and this also means that he will be able to freely use all his powers during them. So Gilly thinks that this is actually a good opportunity, and the boy says that is exactly what it is. He just has to thank his older sisters while he accumulates achievements, and besides that he says that it won't be a problem if he takes a cat with him, but he tells Murikin that he won't take him on missions because he needs him to do something else, thing he will tell you later, but asks that the two of them remain discreet until then, and the two agree to this, and the next day Zed tells the three that from now on, after morning training, they will receive special training in this secret training camp intended only for the pureblood Run Kandel, and he says it's a special right for them purebloods, but he also tells them don't expect it to be easy, and he says that your clan's swordsman sheepies like tyranny is destructive and merciless battle and loot. Run Kandel's personality is directly reflected in their swordsmanship, and besides, their clan's swordsmanship has no specific forms. They have secret techniques and decisive moves to kill, but they still need to become flag bearers to learn them. While Zad speaks, Jean thinks that they must have taken a hide from the Ani and Demille, and Zed continues saying that this is an ethereal swordsmanship with no rules of step techniques or even a proper form, and this is the biggest characteristic that defines what separates him from the other martial clans. And then he asks if they know why the Yor swordsmanship has no form, and Jean says that it is because of the physical capacity and specific senses of the Run Kandel lineage, and Zed says that is exactly what he says, that the Run Kandel are a blessed lineage that have a body that cannot even be compared to normal humans. They are born with an incredible talent for swordsmanship, and there may be differences in terms of individual skills, but each Run Kandel has it, and he says that what they have to learn is stupidly simple, and he tells each of them to lift a steel ball, and Jean he asks what that is, noticing that there is something inside there, and he asks if it is a piece of metal, and Zad says that he calls these things clear stones, and Zad says that they have that name because when it's time they produce a clear sound, and then Zad says that now he must let them listen to the 3 different sounds of these stones and tells them to listen carefully, and then he gives the first blow, which leaves the boys a little distressed, and he says that that sound is quite unpleasant, so he gives the next blow much more sound calmly. Then he says that as they heard, the Clara stone makes different sounds depending on how hard you hit it. He says that when it hits weakly it makes a blurred sound, and when it hits it hard it makes a beautiful sound, and Jim understands this by saying which will make a clear sound depending on the way you hit it. He says it is a training to increase strength, control, mentality, and focus, and he says that thinking about the natural physical abilities of a Run Kandel is good and simple, but a direct training it's him. He says that in the end you just have to hit a rock repeatedly, and says that it lacks the danger to be called secret Run Kandel training, and then Zad monster or a sound that comes out of the rock raising his sword high ready to hit the rock, e.g. it becomes wondering what the third sound is because there was definitely a sound echoing inside the stone. It seemed like it was a mental sound, but when Zed was about to hit the stone, Jim notices something and then asks the Tonus brothers to get down, and when the stone is hit she crack and creates a gigantic explosion in the place, and of note that it seems that the youngest one has a good intuition, and he says that that's right. The Clara stones are set to explode as soon as you put a lot of force, and he says that the 3 of them are the first after the Luna to not get hurt after this explosion, since most of his brothers learned from him this unsophisticated demonstration is a rite of passage, but Zad says he didn't expect to see another child unharmed, but Jean asks him a question wanting to know how Luna dodged, and Zad asks if he would feel bad hearing it just like all the other older brothers, but Jim says it's okay, so Zed says that, to be exact, Luna couldn't dodge it like him, like the other children. She was hit by the explosion, but he simply didn't get hurt because he was too strong, and seeing the stupid look on their faces, he says that anyway, the 3 of them from today onwards are going to hit clear stones every afternoon. They are going to always hit, no matter the circumstances, until can hear a clear sound, and in that already with Luna her nanny brings up the subject she said in the past, and Luna realizes that it was about her brother Jim's murder, and the nanny says that it bothers mother, and seeing how they have been aware of the young master recently, she says that she has a big chance. However, Luna says that they can act recklessly, but in no way are they crazy enough to attempt an assassination inside the Storm's castle, especially because it is forbidden to start a battle for hegemony against the Run Kandel that he hasn't left the Storm castle yet. Furthermore, if these plans reached his father's ears, the house would be turned upside down and even their lives would be in danger, and the nanny asks if there is a possibility that Jean would have made a mistake since he was only 10 years old at that time, and she believes that both cases could have been true, and Luna says that in fact they were investigating for 5 years but they didn't find anything, and she doesn't think that Jean would have lied, but anyway at that time the youngest was in guard against her, and she says that this may not have been because he felt purely a threat to his life but because of human instinct, and she says that it seemed like that, so the nanny asks if she should first investigate Anne and me, then Luna says yes, he's going to leave it to her, but she says that instead she's more worried because she hasn't had any results so far, which gives her a bad feeling, but the nanny says that she's the one who should be worried. After all, Luna is going to be hurt by her children, brothers, younger, but she says it's been a long time since she passed 30, she doesn't need to worry so much about her, says anyway she wonders if Jean is doing well, and then the nanny asks if it's about Zed's training, and she says yes because it's time for him to show her the results of his mind's eye training, and she says it will hurt a little to be hit by the Clara stones, but she's sure he'll do well, and she also says it's fun to watch him growing. Then the following day, at the beginning of 4 o'clock training, he starts to think that this training among the others he has done to date is what makes him feel the most shit about it. Zed gives them a 5-minute break, and Jim says he thought it was training to learn to control his strength and will, but this was not the case, and from the beginning he must prioritize increasing the destructive force of his aura. While his uncle was able to break Clara's foot without using his aura, he, due to his lack of brute strength, must train his aura to compensate for this lack of strength, and you need to train your aura to hear the sound Claro and also break the stone, but he says he won't rush, he will take his time, and it's something that even those immature brothers achieved in their past life. He says that then that means he shouldn't have, like he can't do it, and Zed thinks that all 3 of them aren't doing badly and are coping, but Jean is exceptional, and he says that he should be able to break Luna's record, and at night Zed is disappointed, calling the brothers pathetic, and tells Jean leave a message with them because if they plan to pass out tomorrow too they shouldn't even come, and Jim says that the Tana brothers lasted longer than expected, and in the end a Run Kandel is still a Run Kandel, and Zed in turn thinks about the youngest after all of the people. Why the younger? If he had only been born 10 years earlier he would have been a talent capable of swallowing the Run Kandel clan, and he says that no matter how much he thinks about it, it is a shame. And the month later, in March 1795 of the intermediate training camp, it is said that the first mission of the year for the class intermediate was issued, and the cadets, those who are called, must take a step forward, and the first mission is an escort, and the commissioners they must protect are the newcomers from the Minch Blacksmithing Association, and he begins to dictate the group. And the third mission is a monster subjugation, and they say that the targets of the subjugation are orcs, and the mission will be in an unprotected zone of the Curano Duchy, and the group he says will be Misa Balop, Scott Diamonds, Kiko Zen Eddington, Sierra Fills, and David the 10 mentioned. Then he says that in total there are 25 orcs, and he says that the orcs have a tendency to systematically walk in groups, and he tells them to sort themselves out and take on the mission. He says that that's all, and Petro will tell them more about the details and wishes them good luck, but everyone is scared. After all, they are in charge. Newbies subjugate orcs, then half of them will come back dead, and everyone starts laughing at them, and that maniac starts saying that they still have time to write a will, or they can just tell Master Jean to save them because they are scared, and when they try fight back, Table tell him to hold on tight because they are still not that skilled at facing them head on, and she says that because it is before the mission it will be even more problematic if he gets hurt, but the boy continues trying to defend the young master, but she tells him to shut up his mouth and stay quiet, and ask if he has already forgotten that he is in the Run Kandel clan. They must carry out the missions they receive and return after completing them successfully, and this is the only way to lower their ball, and during training Raytona ends hitting the ball very hard, and the ball explodes on top of all of them, and Daytona almost hit Jean in turn receives the impact, and Raytona asks if his brother is okay, but Jean just asks them to do it away from him, and when the two move away he thinks it's been a month since they started training with the Clara stones and they started to explode them. Now he thought it would take longer, but he thinks about the sensation he felt almost now. He says it was as if he could see the trajectory of the steel sphere coming at him, and he says that it was a clear sensation as if it were an arrow coming towards him. He says that if another steel sphere came flying towards him he thinks he would definitely be able to dodge it. He also asks if this feeling could be related to the training he had with his sister Luna, and he plans to continue before he forgets this feeling, but Zed says that he received missions, and then the brothers start crying because they have to go to an event. He wonders why it always has to be in the Vermont Empire. He says he's already sick and bored. After all, they hate formal clothes because because they're too stuffy, but his uncle just offers his condolences. He says that thanks to him, his brothers don't have to dance at the Empire Party. However, it could be at the event, but it's still a mission. He asks why they are complaining. He says that if he shows this attitude one more time he will show what it's like to really want to be dead, and the boys soon apologize, and Jean thinks that the Zani Mayo sisters are cruel, sending the two who are bad in talks to a social event in Vermont to punish them, and Zed says it's a big event that even the Rukandal clan can't ignore, so he's sure they'll have some strong people on vacation there, and he tells the boys to check them out because they can learn something, and they both respond positively. He says that as for Jean, he will have another mission, and he says it is an assassination, and he says that the target is Taylor's toy, the master of the hidden palace. In other words, is one of his many lovers, and he asks if the boy knows about the palace hidden and his master. The boy says yes and explains that the hidden palace refers to a massive tower in the middle of the sea in the west of the continent, and the owner of this tower is called the master of the hidden palace and is currently the 51st master, Talaris N. Dorma, and she is someone known as the abyssal spider, and they say that she is famous for being cruel to anyone who touches her lover. And Zad says that the hidden palace is a faction that is outside the influence of the Run Kandel and the Zipfel, and he says that this should give the Jean an idea to comfort the hidden palace and his master San. He tells the boy that his target is Alcaro Zengler, and he says that he is currently being protected by a palace agent and is residing in Mummet, the lawless zone, and the twins are scared with that, saying that missions in Mummet are generally given to the Guardian Knights. So Jim says he has a question for his uncle, and he says that the client is the Zadlander clan, and he asks if it's really true that the clan's own PR is asking for a murder of one of them, and his uncle says it's true. It seems that the Setlanders tried all kinds of things to get him back, but they failed, so they probably considered it better to kill him than let the clan's secrets leak, and he asks the boy if he thinks that he will be able to accomplish this mission, and the boy simply responds that he will be able to. Yes, so Zad wonders where the boy's confidence comes from. After all, he must know about here with 11th Master and Mummet, and yet he says yes immediately, and he says who thought he would have to talk to the flag bearers if he thought it was unfair, but he simply tells Jean that he liked his answer and tells the three that they are going to leave in 2 days, and Distona gets scared asking if Jean actually going to Mummet, and his uncle says there's no reason to stop him when he wants to go. They say they're going to pause nighttime training until the mission, and tells the boys to only do enough personal training so as not to affect their missions, and the twins go talk to the Jean, saying that if the things really get ugly he should just reveal that he is a Run Kandel, and that way no one will be able to mess with him. But Jim is impressed that they are worried about him, but they didn't even notice that they were doing this. They say that they just don't want the boy to die before they have the chance to crush him, and Jean tells them both that by the time he comes back he hopes they have made up their minds, so he hits that ball making a beautiful sound, and they are surprised, and Jim tells them to decide if they prefer him or the girls, your older sisters, and Zed speak to the two, reaffirming what Jean said, telling them to prepare their minds and not challenge him until they are strong enough that if they want to live for a long time. Then 2 days later the cadets go to Jean saying that they heard that he goes to Mummet, the lawless zone. They soon realize that Jean has changed the color of his hair. He says that they are a disguise because they can't find out that he is a Run Kandel, and he says that since they are on another mission they are going to use a gate transfer different, and he asks the cadets if they have a subjugation mission, and Mesa says yes, but Jim notices that they have a very gloomy face and asks what happened, but Mesa says it's nothing and says he just wanted to give God the hymn before he leaves. Then he asks why is it God, after all this won't be the last time, but Mesa says he's sure one of them will die if he has bad luck, but Jean says worrying won't change anything, so they should focus on their missions, and tells them that he will come back alive and tell them to avoid getting hurt too much, so Balop tells him to be careful, and so they say goodbye, and Murikin has had enough saying that he has some cute friends, so Jean asks him to protect the boys, and Murikin says that he will definitely do that, after all he is the big black dragon, but Jean he tells him not to be discovered or to be obvious, but Murikin gets very angry telling him not to expose himself, and if he finds himself letting his guard down he says it's leaking, and Gil says that since Murikin won't be there he'll stay very quiet for a while time, and he tells her to see it as a vacation and says that he will bring souvenirs when he comes back, and she says that even so it is a murder against the lover of the master of the hidden palace, and that worries him, and she says that she knows that he is not like a cadet normal intermediary, but Mummet is still a dangerous place, and she tells him to be careful, and the boy says he's going to leave and that he'll be back. So he explains a little about Mummet. The lawless zone is a land where the dirtiest criminals gather, right? So a guy half-hearted comes in saying that he is new in town, and they ask them to say hi to him, and everyone recognizes that guy and says that it is a sanctuary for lawless criminals, and it is said that it radiates energy from those lawless criminals, and then Jean arrives at the place with a very closed face, and they say that this energy that runs there doesn't even let weeds grow, and soon everyone notices that boy and realizes that they have new meat there. And the boy simply asks for cold water and something simple to eat, and everyone says that he is a boy. Bold, and that same guy from before, he asks if he isn't acting too pompous for a newbie and asks who he is, asking if he is a renegade 9-star knight. Then he puts his hand on Jin's shoulder and says that if he is a newbie in Mummet he thinks he should know a little more about his rules, telling Jin to calmly kneel down and lick his foot. But the boy simply kills him on the spot and asks the attendant how long he is planning to make him wait, and unlike that should all happen. They start laughing, saying that he really died and saying that he already imagined that this would happen at one time or another, and Jin thinks that just like his master told him, this place is full of freaks and to be accepted by lawless criminals he needs to demonstrate courage and enough skill, and that's what she told him, and she says that this was a great help in her past life and in this one, and hopes that one day he can repay her master. And the attendant soon brings his food, saying that he didn't poison her, but Jim says that poison is prohibited in this city, at least he knows that. And the attendant notices that the boy is well informed and asks if he has family there, but Jin says it's none of his business, and the attendant asks again what he wants, asking if the boy wants drugs, and says that there are good ones and that they are running out very quickly, or if he is looking for someone. Then Jin says that it is the last option, and Jin asks if by chance there is someone called Hister there, but the attendant says no, and that are you sure about this? Then Jim asks if he can suggest a place to spend the night, preferably one that isn't full of crawling insects, and then the guy says that there is a place that perfectly fits that criteria, and it's an inn called Moonlit Pulse on the west side of town. He says that this place is where the king of Mummet stays, so he won't get into trouble like he did there, and soon he arrives at that inn and thinks that Al-Karat Zendler is the rubbish son of a count who grew up protected without knowing what difficulty is, and he is crazy about pleasure and fun. He says that the guy has nothing but lineage and a pretty face, and says he is a scoundrel who is weak to the strong and strong to the weak. And the reason why he's staying in the dangerous city, it's probably to get the attention of the master of the hidden palace, who is worried about a new lover, so this is the only place he would be. And he remembers that the guy from Ains said there was a new drug in Mummet, so there is a big chance that that guy is drugged in his room, and since he is one of the master's lovers from the hidden palace, he is sure that he must have bodyguards, so he should assess the situation in the salon to begin with. Then the man starts shouting, asking why he is saying he can't, and he says that his guard had no problem getting him some yesterday. In turn he thinks it must be his lucky day because he met him right away, so his target starts arguing with his guard, asking for more and more drugs. He says he can't because he needs to remember why his job is protect you, but the man, he tells him to shut up and doesn't want to hear another peep, and tells his guard to go get more drugs, and says that if he can't stop he has a plan, saying that as soon as they come back their heads will be ripped off. And the guard starts to sigh and look at the man behind him and then punch that guy in the stomach, putting him to sleep. Then he wonders how long they will have to protect that piece of shit, and says that he just wanted him to get screwed and die at his shitty addiction. And then he asks why Mia is alive, but the other guy tells him to keep quiet because his job is to just follow what was said without emotions. Ian realizes that his guards seem to be soft-haired artists, -6 stars, and killing El Caro seems to be easy. However, the problem comes after that because he needs to find a way to take the guy out and kill him without being caught by the guards. He says that using poison there is a taboo. What if he kills him, so the whole Mamite will go to war? However, his guards are on the way to kill him directly, so he starts thinking of a way to kill El Caro discreetly in the moonlit well, and soon he decides what he's going to do. And the next morning another group starts asking how many men he has, how bodyguards, and say that there are 6 people, and the girl who appears to be the leader of this group laments that they were working hard because of a fool who doesn't know his place, but the man says that today, at the end of this, since she came in person, go facilitate the things for them, and she says that she can kill a guy like him whenever she wants, and asks if he was really in the lighted well as they said, and tells them to hurry up. But a thundercloud starts to form in the sky, and she says that's good news, they must be sent quickly. But that thundercloud produces lightning that falls on the pulse illuminated by the moon and destroys everything, and seeing that destruction the girl realizes that choosing a bad day to appear there, and returning to Jim he outlines his plan, saying that go terrorize the moonlit wrist with his magic from his room, and he says that it is a 4-star, but if he puts in his spiritual energy he can create 6-star level destruction, and with this type of spell they will be sure that it is an act of at least a 6-star mage, and he wonders who would suspect a 15-year-old boy of being a 6-star mage. He says he doesn't have a single person, and even Beraden Zipfel just became a 6-star mage, and because of the special energy trait there will be nothing indicating that he was the one who used the spell. He says that there will be no way for anyone to suspect him, and to make the attack seem like it came from outside, invoking lightning will probably be the best spell for that. And then he begins the release of spiritual energy and takes over that whole room with darkness, and thinks that he really had a very scary plan, and he soon summons his lightning, destroying everything in front of him, and in turn Cirrus and Dorma sees everything from the front, and his guard says that it seems that someone from the moonlit well angered a high-level powerful wizard, and she says that this could be the case, but it could also be an attack against the hidden palace. After all, there are 6 people in the inn, not to mention Alcaro, her mother's lover, who is also there. She tells them to go quickly because she doesn't care what will happen to Alcaro, but they must prioritize the condition of their men. But as she runs, she sees another lightning falling there, and all the people start to leave, asking who is there doing that, and one of them talks to a man who said he had killed one of the Zipful Aints wizards, and he immediately thinks they are taking revenge for that, but he says he invented that shit. And when another one of those rays comes towards that girl's subordinate, she manages to stop the attack, and he wonders what is happening, and she in turn notices the strength of that impact and thinks it must have been the last attack, so he agrees with that, and she hopes that everyone is safe. And the psychopath who was inside is being hit by himself. Attack thinks that perhaps because of the final lightning that was imbued with his spiritual magic, and it was so strong that it seemed like an almost 7-star attack. He says that he managed to avoid injuries thanks to his pendant, and he also realizes that all the palace guards hidden seem to be safe, but he asks where is the might, and he thinks that if he is alive this could be his chance. But then Siri comes close to him and notices that there is someone his age in Mummet and asks if he is okay, because the boy was also caught in that attack. And she tells him to get up and get out of there quickly. Then one of her men comes close to her saying that everyone is there and they are a little injured but they are all alive, and she says that this is good news, calling them out, and if they are still they are defending the crab might, and tells them to kill it, so he obeys that, and she says that all the spells were similar, so it was definitely a one-person thing, and if he finds the wizard she tells him to tie it up immediately. And Jean recognizes the girl as his daughter from the master of the hidden palace, and judging by her conversation he soon concludes that it seems that she came to take care of the might, and he thinks that since he is destined to die he no longer has to go after him. He says that the problem is what comes after, because it will be problematic if she remembers his face. He says he will hide it as long as he can while he escapes in the middle of the confusion. Then Cirrus men come to talk to her saying that Alcaro died in the attack and they failed as bodyguards, but she says that this is good news, and she says she came to free them from this duty, and says that it was a good job taking care of that idiot for so long, and in that she says that the hidden palace is going to take control of the inn for the moment, and announces herself as Cirrus and Dorma, the daughter of Taylors, the master of the hidden palace and captain of the 7 swords of the palace hidden, and she says that anyone who challenges them will be considered an enemy of the hidden palace. But the man tells her to stop clowning, because even though she is the daughter of the hidden palace there is Mummet, and they say that too. The hidden palace takes control of the situation over the king of this city. They are overstepping their authority, and they also say that there is even a chance that they were attacked because of them. So the girl gets serious and soon goes after the 2, beheading them, and she says that it was clear that anyone who challenged would be considered an enemy, and asks about King of Me. She asks if they can underestimate the hidden palace just because they pretended to be kings of a den of vagabonds, and she says that if it is revealed that this terrorist attack was directed at the hidden palace they will repay appropriately, but if the wizard is one of them and the hidden palace was pig in the middle of this, she asks what they are going to do, because she thinks that is reason enough for them to control this place, so they let she can do what she wants, because they are also trying to find and kill the wizard who did it, and she says that's what she thought. So she tells them to find the wizard who attacked the inn as a survivor, but they say it's not one of them because there is no magician there. But she says that she is not surprised, but there is a chance that one of them ended up angering the magician by causing confusion in that place, and she tells them to stop resisting uselessly. And she says that as for Jean, she asks why the boy is being so slow and if he didn't listen to you when you told him to leave, but he says he was a little scared, and not to mention he hurt his leg, and he apologizes to her. And the girl says he's a huge coward to the man, although he is beautiful for one swordsman, in that she pulls out an ointment and asks him to pull down his pants, and she says that he is lucky to have survived that attack, and also says that he is very lucky to have her give medicine to them, to great beings, and tells him to think about it with a big honor. So he asks how he can return this favor, but she smiles at him saying that she doesn't need to. After all, how could someone like him return a favor to a great person like her? And she tells him to just consider it as a good memory, and from time to time she tells him to bow towards the hidden palace and says goodbye to the boy. He stays behind smiling falsely, thinking that his mission has been completed. While Jean is messing around a monstrous disguise for that girl from the hidden palace, the cadets continue killing the oars and notice that they have already killed 18, and note that maybe they can come back without any of them dying, and everyone is happy. But the table tells them not to let their guard down because there are still 7 to go. Orcs. Then they come to their senses, and she says that orcs, they are normally well organized and move in groups, and them walking alone makes things easier. It's as if the gods are watching over them, and she says that either it's that or the young master has the blessing of a god, and this luck ended up falling on them too. So she tells them to go exploring again and stay focused and not let their guard down. So in the meantime Murikan continues watching them from the middle of the woods and says that there are only 7 left, and as soon as they defeat Seat he can go home. And he says that in a few days ago, the day Jin's division was sent for the mission, he went ahead. Then he speaks to all the oars, ordering that from now on they must walk alone, and if any of them walk in a group he himself will kill them them all and he says that if they understand they must spread out now, and Murikin thinks that that kid will keep telling him to do annoying things, and the dragon says that Jean must think that because he is the promised contractor he would be the bam 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 of everything, but he says that it won't be like that, but thinking better, he says that being the contractor ends up doing boy is all that, and while he is lamenting this boring task he feels a presence that scares him and asks what kind of thing it is. He says that that presence is coming there. He keeps asking himself where something like that came from, and Murikin thinks that it won't go away on its own. He's happy that these kids are only 3 stars because Jean would have noticed his barrier immediately, so he covers the place with that creature. But Bob feels something different and notices that it's gotten darker, wondering if it's going to rain. Meanwhile, the Murikin keeps an eye on that thing and asks, in the form of a dragon, who dares to release its presence without his permission, but in this he notices that it was not a form of life but a relic of the ancient era. A giant of the cemetery. He says he's sure all the dragons got rid of them 2000 years ago, and he asks what something that should be protecting the tombs of the dead gods is doing there of all places. He says whatever the reason this isn't, it's a friendly meeting. So he says he's going to eliminate him in a single attack and then blows on the monster, eradicating him completely, and the Murikin says it's been a long time since he used his powers for real and says his body is in pain. He says that's not it could just be a giant from the remaining cemetery, and he says there's no way this isn't related to the Zipful. He asks what the fuck is going on, but he says for now he needs to hide this from the boy because he can just protect him if something happens. What if he can only grow at this rate for 10 years? He might actually be able to fight Zipful. This a guy who looks like he literally came out of a betrayal. Jim tells his Lord Vikhel saying he has a problem. He says he's left cousin the cemetery giant, it was destroyed, and he is Buvard Gaston the Transformer and seen what I say. He heard that said and says that the cemetery giant fell in the middle of the night, and Buvard is irritated by this because who would do something so horrible like breaking a work of art? But seen what do I say, that is not important now because Ho ended up with the giant in the cemetery. It was a dragon, and it was the shadow dragon. He says that he checked the scene himself, but Buvard is surprised by the dragon and asks if the dragons have already realized his plans. But since I say it's nothing yet, right, but it's a warning of course, and for now he should take good care of this place. And he says that he will assign some useful men to it. They should arrange a meeting with Zipful in the near future, and Zad starts to praise Jean, saying that he managed to complete his mission successfully and return safely from that hell hole that is Mummet. Then he says that he certainly surpassed the flag bearers who gave him the mission. They are going to be furious about this. He thanks his uncle, and with that Zed dismisses everyone, and while the cadets continue congratulating Jean, the envious people keep talking, asking if they heard about the rumors and saying that apparently some wizard coincidentally attacked the inn where the target was staying, and they say that the young Jean master is very lucky and say that the world is unfair and it's not enough to be a run candle. He is also blessed with good luck, and for some of them at best they will always be intermediate class cadets no matter how hard they try, and he says it would be less annoying if unless he was skilled, but young Master Jean is at most 4 stars and all his minions are 3 stars. So he asks if Kai Jean will just watch this happen, but he asks what he can do, and he says they may hate him, but the boy's still a run candle of blood, and he says that Mealy and Annie gave him a direct order so they have nothing to do. But the boy starts to get closer and he wonders if the boy would have heard, but from that distance it would be very difficult. But Jean says he could hear everything and asks Kajin how his arm is. He says that he has to thank the young master for making a clean cut, which makes it easier for the doctors to fix it back, and the boy says that they were having a very interesting conversation. They say that everything that what they can do is talk badly behind his back and hope the boy understands, and he says there's nothing for him to understand. After all, it's not like he's a flag bearer yet, and technically speaking he's not his superior, but Kai Jean says that is just in technical terms because just a few words is what he needs to end the inferior like him. And Jean asks why he thinks he would do something like that, and Kajin says it's because he's being very respectful, and Jim says that's definitely something unpleasant, and the guy doesn't keep quiet, saying that it's actually unpleasant to see everyone recognize him when he only completed his mission by pure luck. So Jean says that it seems like he got something wrong, and he says that he didn't call Kaijin unpleasant because he's there making fun or disrespecting. He says that Kajim as a 5-star knight he is one of the most skilled in the intermediate class, and that means he must be stronger than the boy. So he asks why all he is doing is talking shit behind his back, and he says who thought he had been very clear when he said that anyone could challenge him at any time. So Kajin asks if the boy is serious. He says that's what it is and tells him to get his sword. He says that has no intentions to take it easy, so they're going to do it right. Then Kaijin recognizes that it looks like the boy doesn't want any aura restrictions, and Jean says he nailed it, but the guy says he's going to regret this even now, and a fight ensues, and Jean says that his attacks are heavy but he is nothing compared to those he will have to face in the future, and the guy starts asking if Jean can already see reality because he is not yet at a level where he can pick a fight with him. So when he throws his Jean sword at her close to her face, and then he gets a kick in the middle of the stomach that throws him away, but while he is hit the Kaijin tries to hit him again, but Jean can see his sword. He says that just like Jean was almost hit by the Raytona's steel ball, he can see at the trajectory of attacks. Kajin, and he says that there are infinite directions that a sword can cut through the air, but there are not many trajectories that a 5-star knight can use, especially if his opponent is consumed by rage. So he says that he will end this duel with 3 moves, and Jean, he says he's already read all his attacks. He won't be able to beat him anymore, but Kajin keeps saying that he must be talking a lot of shit with that. They come back and exchange attacks. He says that first he's going to cut from the left, and second, Jean will make a balance go regularly upwards, and finally for his final attack he will use the aura that a 5-star knight will not be able to block, and then Kajin falls to the ground wondering how he managed to do that attack, but Jean says that he thought that it would take a few years to reach the aura of 5 stars. So the Kajin asks if he cheated because he's a 5-star, but the boy says he never cheated on him, he just didn't know him very well. He doesn't pick fights he can't win. Then the Tana brothers come running asking what is happening, and when they notice that Jean defeated the Kajin, they are paralyzed, and Jean tells them that it is nothing, and when the boy passes by they are completely terrified, and with the Kajin sisters they say that it was defeated by Jean. They ask if he really wants her to believe that. He says he doesn't have much to say, so Ain asks him if he gave her some change or did he take it easy because he's a run candle, but he says he didn't do it out of no way. So Mealy asked what happened after all. He's saying that Jean became a CINest aura user so quickly at only 15 years old, and Kajin says that everyone at the training camp saw it and it wasn't just him. That aura was definitely from a 5 stars. However, they say it doesn't matter because it's their fault for creating so much expectation in him, and they tell the guy to get out of there now. In the meantime they are left in puddles and they wonder if this means that Jean is showing his fangs to him, but Thousand says no, it is just for them. He actually showed his fangs to the entire clan, and she says that in the next mission she will send some of her men with him to a place that will definitely become his tomb. Kid, it's because she's a sister, right? Imagine if it weren't so. Geely tells Jean that the Garden of Swords is in an uproar and everyone is shocked by his achievement. He says that the first patriarch, his father, and Luna were the only 3 in history who became 5-star knights at the age of 15, and he says that with this he has a 5-star swordsmanship, a 4-star magic, and 4-star spiritual energy. He says that 5-star swordsmanship is something that not even he expected, and all he did was the constant training of the Clara Stone, and before he knew it he reached the 5-star level. He says it seems like the 3 powers that he has, spiritual energy, magical power, and the aura, affects each other whenever one gets stronger. He says that when he went through the congestion of spiritual energy he felt the path that the aura and the flow of mana opened, rising an internship, and he says he doesn't know anything about it because he is the only person to use the 3 powers, but they are very intertwined. So he asks Gil who put that flower there, and she says the flower was placed while it was outside, so she tidied it up and asks if she should throw it away, but he tells her to leave it there because he doesn't feel any magic or curses coming from her. So anyway, he says that he blatantly revealed that he became a 5-star knight for 15 years and his brothers are going to become desperate, this including the older brother Joshua, who was recognized as a likely patriarch. So speaking of him, after the first flag bearer Luna Run Candle abdicated the succession, he is the second flag bearer who grew up as a strong candidate to be the patriarch, and currently with the support from his mother Rosa Run Candle he is establishing his influence, and he says that it wouldn't have been bad to keep his abilities hidden for longer, but he decided that it would be better if he revealed his current strength, and since he revealed that he has 5 stars in front of people, the news will spread even outside the Run Candle clan and people around the world will talk about him. So Murikan notices that the boy is drooling over his own egg a lot, but he says that the boy it's right because his brothers will calm down a little with him being the center of attention, but he says that the most important thing of all is that his father will personally come to the Garden of Swords, and he says that his father wanted a successor beyond by Joshua, and he says that apart from Luna he is not satisfied with any of his brothers, and the only one who attracted his attention is not interested in succeeding him, and because of that he decided that she is not fit to lead the clan. And after that Joshua started to establish himself as the next patriarch, while Deepu's Lunsha and Mary are secondary candidates for the succession, and that is how the dynamics of succession were put into practice. But his appearance completely changed the game, and he says that his father is a person who gives opportunities regardless of the age, so he will definitely give him an order like in the beginner class, and he says that whatever it is, 2 things are certain. The first is that it will be a test all to see if he can overcome the age difference between him and his brothers who have already been nominated as successors, and the second is protection because his father doesn't want him to die at the hands of his brothers before he can take the test, and the reason for this is that he is a special case. And Geely says that as soon as the news once published, clans and organizations around the world will asking for audiences with him, says that this is true and there is nothing more appropriate than a banquet to receive several people at once, and he says that as soon as it arrives there will be a banquet. So he tells Guile to prepare and also keep an eye on in Murikan, because if he turns into a human and gets mixed up in the crowd everything goes downhill. In that Murikan starts asking if the boy thinks he's a child, but Gilly obeys his order leaving Murikan all mucho. Then a few days later Jilly says that the butlers seem to be drowning in work answering official correspondence, and she says that she asked Petro and apparently even the Vermont imperial family sent letters, and Jean says that this is incredible because he attracted the curiosity of those mysterious people. E.G. says that in addition the patriarch notified a visit to the main house through CE. He said he will stay there for a month, so she coordinated the visit from the other clans and organizations to fit in with the schedule, but she says that his brothers are quite silent, and he says that if they were to try to keep him under control while he is in the spotlight they would be announcing that they fear him or don't like Jin, and he says that this is a matter of public opinion. But as he speaks the butler breaks in to say that he received a mission, but the location is in the Cologne ruins, and while he discovers this Jin's mother starts to make a show asking how they can call them a flag bearer when that's how they take care of business, so she asks how they can send Jean to the Zipfel territory, and so she calls her daughters sluts and notices that the boy has arrived, and he notices that Luncha Han and Vigo are present this time, and his mother asks if he heard that his next mission would be in the ruins Cologne. He says yes, but she says that this mission has been cancelled, he no longer needs to go to Cologne. But the two girls start to complain to their mother, but she tells them to keep quiet, calling them sluts who only think about how to kill Jean. But Mealy asks her mother if it is. It's strange that she wants to kill her brother, and anyone says that this is true, and honestly she doesn't understand why her mother is protecting him so much. And then her mother asks what they said and says that if they haven't gone crazy they should keep opening their mouths. However, the two say that until now she and her father have persuaded the brothers to fight while she remains silent, and she asks if that is not why the clan demands this competition, and she says that as her mother knows well, everyone there grew up being loved by each others since they were younger, and the other says that this is true. She also received difficult missions while she was in the intermediate class because of her brothers, and the matriarch says that they are right about that and they need competition and there is no reason to limit. However, she asks if any of them managed to reach the 5-star level at the age of 15, and their faces almost fall to the floor, and their mother says that Jean is different from the rest of them, and she says that if they had reached the same level as Jean when they were young you would have protected her too, and she says that what she means is that the two of them are not worthy of receiving her protection. It was a beautiful slap without hands. I felt the pain here, that they also felt the pain being stunned by this response, and she says that seeing their behavior after becoming flag bearers she doesn't regret her decision. And as for them, Luncha Han and Vigo, she says that as part of the same generation of flag bearers they must share the responsibility for these two causing a mess, and she says that Luncha must reflect for a while. Han and Vigo, they must return a famous sword from the clan, so they ask what he means by returning a sword, and she says that she would like to take back all the famous swords in their possessions, but they must be grateful that it is limiting it to just one of each. So now she thinks what Jean is going to do. After all, she dragged all the brothers who have nothing to do with the situation, so she wonders if he will try to follow the moral path and ask her to punish him instead. Them or you will feel superior and satisfied with this level of favoritism, and she wants to see how he will act in this situation. So Jean tells his mother that he really liked the mission that his sisters gave him, and she asks if he is saying that knowing what kind of place the ruins are Colum, and he says he knows yes, because there is the Zipfel territory that the Run Kandel clan failed to conquer in the past. He knows it is dangerous, but he has no intention of backing down from this fight. And guys, if you like this video and want more videos like this on the channel, leave a like, subscribe, and let's get to 100,000 subscribers. So I'll see you in the next video, and I went.